Hey y'all, Scott here, and congratulations on finally not getting that job I just applied to because I'm really gonna get it this time. I put any and all contact information on my resume, including when and where I'm available on PictoChat. That'll set me apart. The Nintendo DS is God's favorite little portable. There is no conceivable way that a product that initially looked like this did this. But Nintendo did the unthinkable and sold over 150 million of these things, and after closer examination, it's incredibly apparent why. The game library is seemingly endless. It initiated tons of concepts that are still being used to this day, and it got all of our uncles to actually play video games. Now, I personally played this guy a ton. The Nintendo DS line of consoles got me through so many car trips as a kid. I would always keep my eyes on the screens the entire time during them, and because of that, only recently I learned that toll booths exist. The DS was announced in late 2003 as simply a new system to be released in 2004, with Nintendo also stating they were planning to focus on developing games that anybody could get behind. A few months later, in early 2004, the codenamed Nintendo DS was unveiled alongside the fact that the system would feature 2 whole screens. Nintendo used a soccer game as an example for dual screen gaming in their press release, describing how one screen could show the main gameplay while the other could display a specific player's tackle or goal. You ever just play a soccer game and you're like, there's just not enough screens? The idea behind 2 screens was a bit odd at first. Nintendo definitely needed to prove their worth, and keep in mind at this point, all we knew about the Nintendo DS was that it had 2 screens. Everything else lodged in the system would officially be revealed later at E3 2004. Yeah, the Nintendo DS wasn't a looker during its prototype phase, but at least Nintendo made up for it by showing off a Metroid Prime game running on the system. Yes, Nintendo's premier 3D first-person shooter was playable on a handheld. That was insane! Not only that, but they also showed off a demo of Super Mario 64 running on the device. This much cockiness can't be healthy. A touchscreen, microphone, Game Boy Advance support, wireless multiplayer, a terrifying design, the whole suite of DS features were unveiled at this point. Metroid Prime Hunters, Super Mario 64 x 4, WarioWare, and the PictoChat application were all playable at the show, alongside playable tech demos that would later become games like Yoshi Touch and Go and the 3DS launch title Steel Diver. Plus, Nintendo showed off videos of upcoming games like Mario Kart DS, Animal Crossing DS, New Super Mario Bros., and Nintendogs. Nintendo later confirmed that Nintendo DS would be the final name for the product, alongside showing off the finalized design. Go back. And the handheld would officially launch on November 21st, 2004 here in North America for $149.99. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but at the height of the DS dynasty, I barely saw the original model out in the wild. It was a rarity. You'd see everybody else playing their DS Lites and DSi's, and then there was that one kid that nobody trusted. Any version of the DS prior to 2006 looked pretty horrendous, to put it lightly. This looks like something you put in a holster. It always looked more like equipment than a sleek video game system. The bottom half has some meat on its bones, and all the curves, ridges, and indents add up to a video game system with a question mark at the end. At least it's comfortable enough to play, all the buttons feel perfectly fine, and it conveniently uses the GBASP charging cable. However, things really start picking up when you actually turn the system on. Touch the touchscreen to continue. Holy shit, this is the future! 2008, here we come! Dual screens weren't necessarily the talk of the town when it came to the DS. Most of it came from the touchscreen. Remember, this was 2004. Touchscreens were seldom used, and when they were, it was almost always stuff like PDAs. And these definitely won't play PAC-PIC, so that's a point for the DS right there. However, the DS was definitely all about video games, even if the user interface tries to scream, I can be a PDA too! A calendar and a clock, that's all you really need. An instant messaging application? Well, don't mind if I do! PictoChat is much more than just the best stage in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and it wasn't just an application. It was an experience. You could start a chat room with 15 other players nearby and just doodle it up, sending whatever you want to each other. You could also just use it by yourself. I used to make some pretty slick flipbooks by just sending a bunch of images and then rapidly going through them all. Here's me drawing stuff on it back in 2009. Whoa! It was never online, so it would only let you chat with people in the same room. You may ask, oh, what's the point of messaging people if you have to be in the same room? Well, just ask the Nintendo DS stylus, or as I like to call it, the crotch doodler. Yeah, the DS touchscreen was just too small and not well suited for finger use. It was always best to use it for applications that required a more sensitive touch, but by God, they made it hard to warrant using it on the original DS model. Listen, I get it. They probably couldn't have put the stylus slot on the right or left-hand side where, you know, your hand would actually be, because of how the system's internals had to be laid out. But I don't care, I'm still gonna whine about it. The stylus placement on this thing reeks. No matter who you are, having the stylus on the top left-hand corner is dreadful. But you know what's one of the lamest things about the original DS? The fact that if you do anything on this system and want to go back to the home screen, you have to turn the system off and on again. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but seriously, if you just go into the settings, not do anything, and try to go back, it forces you to turn the entire system off. Like, that just kind of defeats the entire purpose of having a home screen at all, but whatever. Now, Nintendo was still supporting the Game Boy Advance and GameCube at the time, and always maintained that the DS was a successor to neither of those platforms. Rather, it was a third pillar for the company, and man, Nintendo's comedy routine was really getting good at this point. They were just saying that in case the DS failed, plus if it wasn't a successor, why was it backwards compatible with the GBA? But hey, I'm not complaining about this feature. Having the ability to play all Game Boy Advance games instantly gave the DS a library to reckon with. It's unfortunate they cut it off at GBA and didn't support Game Boy Color in the original Game Boy, but I'll take it. At the time of the DS's release, Sony was preparing the launch of their first true handheld console, the PlayStation Portable, and almost everybody plopped their bets on Sony winning the war. Nintendo never really had a huge threat in terms of handheld competition up until this point. I think Sega probably got the closest with the Game Gear, and I will debate anybody who considers that thing handheld or competition. Sony was the clear leader of the video game market at the time, and the mere idea of them breaking into handhelds made many go, yeah, the one that plays Daxter is gonna win. The PSP was sleeker and way more powerful, so Nintendo had to do something to prove to everybody that the DS could handle more demanding games. So what did they do at launch? They bundled in a demo of Metroid Prime Hunters and crammed Super Mario 64 into a fucking cheese-it of a game card. The launch titles of the DS were pretty weak in my opinion. Really, the only major highlight was Super Mario 64 DS. Listen, the entire concept of playing Super Mario 64 on the go was mind-blowing at the time. To have a game like Super Mario 64 on the go may not seem like a big deal now, but back then, it was amazing. It truly made the DS feel like a home console you could take on the road. The game looked really good for the system, and some may say it looked even better than the original. That's debatable, like it looks better in the sense that the character models are all updated, but everything's much more pixelated overall. However, I think it still looks quite good for the platform and is just a solid remake all around. Too bad my thumbs fucking hate it. Yeah, most of my showers nowadays consist of me thinking about why they thought Mario 64 on the DS was a good idea considering it only has a D-pad. I mean, it works, but it's not ideal in the slightest. They give you a few control options, including using the touchscreen to walk around, Jesus. But the D-pad is the most optimal, and it's still putrid. And to everybody who says, play it on the 3DS, that way you'll get your precious analog stick. Guys, the game was programmed to function with a D-pad and a run button. Using a circle pad doesn't fix the issues, it still doesn't feel right. It just kinda bugs me that they put so much work into a remake of Mario 64, only to have it kinda ruined by the limitations of the hardware they put it on. A similar situation happened with Metroid Prime Hunters, with it being a first-person shooter on the platform. I think Nintendo wanted to prove at launch that the DS could do things that it could definitely do, but not crazy well. However, by around 2006, Nintendo totally threw this urge out the window and focused on the casuals. This was when the DS really took off, and the console's first redesign played a key role here. The Nintendo DS Lite, released on June 11, 2006, was everything Civilization was leading up to. The difference between the first model and the Lite are night and day. The Lite improved on nearly everything. The design was sleek and refined. The screens actually totally didn't reek. The stylus placement, oh, the stylus placement. The only two negative things about the Lite were the fact that the GBA games stuck out when you popped them in, and it used its own proprietary charger. Other than that, this is a beautiful system. This was the model I got as a kid back in 2007. I had the white one and got so much playtime out of it. But f*** this system, because 2 years later, another redesign came out, the Nintendo DSi, released on November 1st, 2008 in Japan, with a North American release happening on April 5th, 2009. In short, the DSi was an improved DS with 2 cameras, but who cares because they got rid of the GBA slot. This was a big deal to a lot of people, and I gotta be honest, it was a pretty solid blow to me. But 2009 Scott still traded his trusty DS Lite in for a black DSi. In my opinion, it was still a worthwhile upgrade simply due to the fact that it added so much functionality to the system. Cameras were the big selling point, but to me, it was cool simply because it almost felt like a Wii in your pocket. The overall presentation just felt so similar to the Wii, with the way the various apps and games were laid out, the music playing on the home screen. The DSi even had an online shop similar to the Wii, which sold DSiWare games. While the DSi shop was recently closed, all the games minus 10 select ones can be purchased on the 3DSi shop, so it doesn't look like some apocalypse or anything is gonna happen. DSiWare always left me feeling a bit empty though. Much like WiiWare, a ton of garbage was thrown onto the service. Sure, some stellar titles were on there, Shantae Risky's Revenge, Cave Story, Dark Void Zero, but there sure was a ton of trash. Nintendo charged like $2 each for calculator and clock apps, like, come on. WarioWare Snapped was a criminally short WarioWare title that used the cameras and had you batting your hands around to play micro games, and that barely worked. Dr. Mario Express was a solid Dr. Mario game, but it didn't have online play, so that was a bummer. But at least Flipnote Studio was awesome. It was a really great little animation tool. Photo Dojo was so cool. You took pictures and turned yourself and friends into fighting game characters. There was definitely fun to be had with some DSiWare games, but there just wasn't a ton of heavy hitters. And I was also always bummed they never had a virtual console for the DSi shop. Like, come on, you took away the GBA slot, you should have had a virtual console to resell old handheld games. Outside of the internet functionality, the DSi had terrible cameras coupled with amazing software. All the edits you could do to your pictures were awesome, and you could also mess with audio recordings via the DSi Sound app. Once again though, a new charging cable is used, which is a mega annoyance. Now if you hate the idea of a handheld system being handheld, Nintendo released a variant of the DSi a year later, the Nintendo DSi XL, launching on November 21st, 2009 in Japan and March 28th, 2010 in North America. They weren't kidding, this is in fact an XL version of the DSi. If you want larger screens, then by all means, the DSi XL is for you. It has a glossy coating on the outside and came with a fountain pen. Other than that, it's literally just a bigger DSi. The XL systems were marketed towards the more hardcore players with the Nintendo 3DS line, but the DSi XL? Just take a look at the colors we got, burgundy and bronze. These things flooded retirement homes. And those are all the DS models out there, and in terms of which systems hold up best today, I'd say anything from the DS Lite onwards. However, I think all the variations have great feeling controls. The DS Lite has a bit of a softer, squishier D-pad, and while that sounds bad, it actually feels really nice. The DSi is much clickier if you're into that sort of thing. You can play DS games on the 3DS, but if you want an original DS model, I'd say go with the Lite. The DSi's exclusive features aren't too awful compelling nowadays, and the lack of GBA compatibility makes the DS Lite far more useful. Plus, almost all of the DSi features live on with the 3DS. The cameras, sound app, DSiWare games, it's all there, so the DSi itself isn't too awful necessary to own these days. But now, we've got to talk about the games, and man, no matter how you slice it, the DS had an insane library. I'd definitely say the third-party support was crazy impressive, maybe even better than Nintendo's. That's not to say Nintendo's offerings weren't good, but the sheer amount of quality third-party games was insane. I'd say the DS had better third-party support than the 3DS, however the 3DS had better first-party support. Looking at the big three Nintendo franchises represented on the DS, the results were a bit iffy. Now I already talked some Super Mario 64 DS, but in terms of original Mario titles on the platform, none were as prolific as New Super Mario Bros. It completely stole the show, was the game to get with the DS, and being the first original 2D Mario game in years definitely helped it out. While it was lauded as one of the best Mario games out there at launch, its reception has definitely went down a bit over time simply due to how many New Super Mario Bros. Titles followed it. Regardless, New Super Mario Bros. Worked. So Zelda kinda tried a similar tactic, taking 3D models and putting them in an old school format. The Legend of Zelda, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks are top-down Zelda games with the same aesthetic as the Wind Waker. It looks fine from the top-down view, but when the camera comes up close to the characters, oh god. These Zelda titles definitely have unique controls. You're required to use the touchscreen and drag your stylus wherever you want Link to go. I don't know, it just doesn't feel as good as button controls to me. It doesn't feel like you are Link, it feels like you're leading Link. That's not to say they're bad, I'm just not a huge fan of controlling Link here. Everything else works pretty well. Metroid Prime Hunters had you move with the D-pad and aim with the touchscreen. Similar to Mario 64 DS's control scheme, it worked, it just wasn't ideal. It was a B-tier Metroid Prime game, but it was still impressive for the system and even included online multiplayer with voice chat. But if you love everything about Metroid Prime except for the gameplay, might I recommend Metroid Prime Pinball? It's better than you think. However, the games that really made the DS explode in popularity were definitely the Touch Generations titles. Games made for those people who don't know where the L button is. Big Brain Academy, Flash Focus, Crosswords DS, Personal Trainer Cooking, but the big one was definitely Brain Age. Flip the DS on its side and hold it like a book to get told off by Dr. Kawashima. Listen man, the only reason why my Brain Age blows is because this game hates how I write fives. Speaking of games that anybody could play, I played a lot of Professor Layton and the Curious Village with my mom. This was such a well-made puzzle game with outstanding production values. On the topic of puzzle games, the DS nailed them. This was like the perfect platform for the genre. Meteos is probably the main puzzle game the DS can call its own. It was designed by Masahiro Sakurai, and I'll eventually learn how to play it, but now's not the time because Picross 3D is on the system. You have standard Picross DS and then Picross 3D, which is really its own thing. Like, they didn't even have to name it after Picross because it's so unique, even though it's still totally Picross. The Mario vs. Donkey Kong series made its way to the DS, starting with March of the Minis, and does anybody else totally confuse all the subtitles for these games? This was a cute little game. My problem with it is that they just kept on making it over and over and over again. At least this one had cool CG cutscenes. Look at these, my jaw dropped when I saw my DS playing such clean looking videos. One thing this game and Metroid Prime Hunters did was show two videos on the separate screens, both of the same scene, but from different angles. This wasn't the craziest best use of resources, but it's an interesting use of dual screens that you really wouldn't find anywhere else. Tetris DS is one of the best versions of Tetris out there. Being developed by Nintendo allowed it to have this amazing presentation featuring all kinds of old school NES sprites. It's fantastic. And if we're talking retro style games, man, the DS was killer. I think the cream of the crop has to be Retro Game Challenge, a loving homage to gaming in the 80s. But there were also a handful of legitimate compilations, like the Sonic Classic Collection, some Atari ones, Namco Museum. In terms of throwbacks, Contra 4, man, a great return for the series. Space Invaders Extreme was really cool. Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars. Now that's a game that screams, don't put me on DS. But it was still an awesome throwback to the first few top-down Grand Theft Autos, but in the style of entries like Grand Theft Auto 4. It's one of the few M-rated games on the platform. There really aren't too many out there, but Chinatown Wars is definitely the most iconic. Oh, rhythm games! Just Rhythm Heaven and Elite Beat Agents alone make the DS the perfect rhythm game machine. And we can't forget the Guitar Hero games on the system. They only worked with the DS and DS Lite due to the guitar grip accessory requiring the GBA slot, but man, this was such a creative way to get Guitar Hero on the platform. RPGs just wouldn't stop on here. Of course, these things, I don't get any of this, but Pokemon had a ton of entries on the DS. The Mario and Luigi series continued on here, Final Fantasy games, including some amazing remakes, the definitive version of Chrono Trigger, Dragon Quest, The World Ends With You, Golden Sun. I may not be an RPG guy, but I know they were fantastic on the platform. Mario Kart DS was huge! I personally never owned it when it was big, but DS brought so much to the franchise. 16 new tracks and the introduction of 16 retro tracks remastered. Online play, mission mode, it's so good. Weirdly enough, if you weren't into Mario Kart, Nintendo also published a remake of Diddy Kong Racing. Yeah, never expected that to come out. Animal Crossing Wild World also brought online play to its franchise for the first time, which became one of the key components of the series. Star Fox Command is better than Star Fox Zero, I'll at least say that. And Chibi Robo actually had games on here. Platformers are my bread and butter though. Kirby was heavily represented on the DS, the most unique game definitely being Canvas Curse. Look at this, you're drawing lines and guiding Kirby around, that's fun! The legendary Starfy was a worthy alternative to Kirby, while if you wanted something a bit more fast-paced, the Sonic Rush series was definitely your go-to. Mario spin-offs were plentiful and included a sequel to Yoshi's Island, this game reeks! And Super Princess Peach second verse, same as the first. Plus, nothing says I hate sex more than Wario Master of Disguise. At least there was actual Castlevania titles on the platform, can't say that nowadays. Scribblenauts was a huge deal when it came out. Being able to write anything and it spawning in the game was just such a cool idea. And if you wanted to get even more creative, Drawn to Life allowed you to draw your own hero character, and I had such a blast with this. WarioWare DIY similarly let me create my own junk in the form of my own micro games, and I loved every second of it. On the topic of WarioWare Touch was alright, it just didn't grab me as much as other entries. But nothing spoke to me on the DS more so than Nintendogs. This was the first game that I owned on the platform, and it utilized every single feature of the hardware in such fun ways. You could talk to your dog, teach it tricks, play with toys, buy more dogs, talk to more dogs, teach them tricks, play with toys, buy more dogs. This was a blast. Don't even get me started on the Nintendo DS browser. But you know what was the best thing about the games on the DS? They came in these cases, and they were like half the size of DVD boxes. They just made games feel more substantial. While a fair amount of the game library is this, the DS was such a fun system. Unlike the Wii, which was constantly chastised for being a gimmick, I always felt like more were accepting of the DS. The library was crazy, and the gimmicks of the system actually turned out to be incredibly useful in various situations. It was hard to try to remember all the great games on the DS, that's how many there were. I'm sure I still missed plenty. Phoenix Wright. Phoenix Wright! This series is great, such a fun visual novel, point-and-click adventure type game. I love these games! Well, it just warmed my heart to go on and on and on about the Nintendo DS. Maybe I'll see if there's anybody nearby on PictoChat who feels the same way. Woo! We got a live one! Somebody joined, maybe I'll tell them I see you like PictoChat. The last two messages didn't send. Yeah, that sounded a lot more murdery than I wanted it to. Hey y'all, Scott here.
it's just not enough. I need more! I want people to look through my window and see a bunch of garbage and say, that looks like a fun house to break into. So I was shifting between two options. I was thinking my first accessory to nab would be a window, but this one had deal or no deal. This is the Nintendo DS. And this is the Nintendo DS now. Handheld gaming has always been Nintendo's sweet spot. Their home consoles, they simply don't believe in roofs. The Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo 3DS, and Nintendo Switch, all incredible successes in their own special ways. But right in the middle was the Nintendo DS, releasing in 2004. This was one of Nintendo's most triumphant accomplishments, and it showed they didn't even need 3 screens to do it. Dual screens, microphone, touch base, Game Boy Advance compatible, it was everyone's dream. And the game library really struck a great balance between hardcore and casual titles, which was something that the Wii attempted. It was fruitless. With a full suite of buttons and the bottom touchscreen being incredibly useful in many cases, more hardcore titles didn't feel completely out of place here. On the Wii, the more hardcore titles, their entire gimmick was, I'm a hardcore title on the Wii. But the Wii was a phenomenon, selling over 100 million units. I personally always considered that to be the more popular system, or at least it felt like it at the time. No, you see, everybody owned a Wii. Everybody owned a DS, and 4 of them. 150 million plus sold. That is insane. One of the best-selling platforms of all time. Of course, being a portable unit with 4 revisions definitely helped that number. The whole family can share a Wii, but each member needs a DS for every finger. I personally owned a white Nintendo DS Lite and went out of my way to ensure I got the DSi. So I can at the very least confirm, while the DS family sold 150 million plus, subtract 1 from the user count. The long and short of it is, the Nintendo DS was a monumental success, even during the Wii's generation, where that felt like the big deal. The DS ended up being 50% more of a big deal. And if the Wii had all these accessories and plastic add-ons made for it, run. The absolute nerve of Nintendo not including all this in the product at launch. The Nintendo DS had a lot of potential for add-ons. You can't look at this hole and not fill it. Look, oh my god, you could add anything here. Footrest. But we can't start talking about accessories until we talk about accessories, and first one up, my college thesis. Almost as notable as the inclusion of 2 screens was the Nintendo DS's touchscreen. The bottom one here was susceptible to abuse. This was the touchscreen. Unlike modern ones, it wasn't multi-touch and required more precise input, which is why using a bowling ball just didn't work. You could use your fingers, but the screen worked best with a smaller input, which is where the DS stylus comes into play. This may look like something that cleans your teeth, but it is Luigi compatible. So many kids lost theirs, but it didn't matter. This screen will accept damn near any form of input. Run. But the traditional stylus still worked the best, which is why Nintendo liked to include extra stylusi. Didn't help things. The stylus industry blew up in the late 2000s. Replacement pens were constantly sold, different colors, sizes, but the issue is, each iteration of the DS had a different stylus design. The entire point of using an official DS stylus is then you can fit it back in its cubby. So if you buy a replacement stylus pack and it doesn't fit your specific model, or you went a little too wild and bought the giant DS pen, well at that point you might as well use a dull pencil. Yeah, there's this pen-like stylus release that clicked in and out. Might not always leave it clicked out. I must preserve the plastic. The final DS iteration, the Nintendo DSi XL, came bundled with a fountain pen stylus. The entire point of this model was to appeal to the elderly, and they love pens. This is obviously the most comfortable stylus as it's shaped and sized exactly like a real man's pen. Since the DSi XL was so big and aimed at Crosswords DS users, having a big extra pen here, it made sense as it wasn't intended as the most portable unit. This feels more at home just on a nightstand or something. I didn't realize until now how each DS had a different stylus design, but that's not nearly as egregious as the different chargers. I had to take a night class for this. Okay, so the original Nintendo DS has the same charger as the Game Boy Advance SP, which is a different charger from the Game Boy Micro, which came after the original DS but before the DS Lite. Where the DS Lite had a new charger specific only to it, then the DSi had its own charger that didn't work with the original DS or DS Lite, and this charger was used for the DSi XL, the 3DS, 3DS XL, 2DS, new 3DS, new 3DS XL, and new 2DS XL. So the DS Lite has a charger that no other being can accept. They made up for it with the Slot 2 pack. The original DS and DS Lite were compatible with Game Boy Advance cartridges. Not original Game Boy, they aren't God. The Nintendo DS Lite was supposed to be actually presentable though, so they included this little filler piece to make the design look more flush. While I didn't ever lose the stylus, I definitely lost this little piece as it was completely unnecessary. It didn't do anything except make you feel better about yourself. Like, what if people see me on the train? The main reason I pitched this was so then I could just plug whatever in the slot whenever I wanted. In which this is the place the most iconic DS accessories called home. This slot, on top of giving us the ability to play Game Boy Advance games, completely revolutionized handheld peripherals. You couldn't do this kind of stuff on the PSP, like the Memory Expansion Pack. you, Sony. This was bundled with the Nintendo DS browser, and what I have here is the DS Lite version. This one will work on the original DS model. For that, you had to go to Nintendo's online shop. Weirdly enough, though, the original DS model's expansion pack works on the DS Lite, but the DS Lite version doesn't work on the original DS, so why wouldn't they just release the original version in stores that works for both? It's because the Nintendo DS browser had no reason to give a shit. Accessories that use the Game Boy Advance slot, or slot 2 as Congress calls it, are called DS option packs and expand the world of DS software to include Wikipedia. The memory expansion pack is required for the browser and very little else. Zero can be little. Yeah, this was only used for this title specifically because the DS can't run a web browser all on its own.
We ask too much of it.
So why not tackle something a bit more useful? The Rumble Pack. This is a full-on throwback to the Nintendo 64, where it too had a Rumble Pack, allowing for supported games to feel the power of a seizure. Some Game Boy Color and Advance titles had built-in Rumble features, but of course that cost more to manufacture. You had to design a cartridge around that kind of thing. With the DS, having an optional separate accessory meant more games could theoretically support it, like Picross DS.
It's like I'm really there.
Roughly 50 games supported the Rumble Pack, and most of them were released from 2005 to 2007. I think many developers and publishers realized most people weren't getting enough out of Rumble in these games to warrant plugging it in slot 2, so why bother even supporting it? But the Rumble is more impressive than I expected though. It's fairly nuanced, kind of like the HD Rumble and the Nintendo Switch controllers. It's not gonna blow your mind, but it's a fairly detailed little Rumble. It's a shame more games don't support it, though I completely understand as I'm not gonna go out of my way to ever use this again. That's right, I'm taking a stand. If we're talking DS accessories that plug into slot 2 though, we gotta talk arthritis. This is one everybody remembers, even if you never owned it. The Guitar Hero Guitar Grip was the DS accessory. Shows how much creativity developers had on the DS. How do we take Guitar Hero and put it on the platform without taking away everything that makes a Guitar Hero, i.e. the guitar? Well, you f up your wrist, that's how. Plugging this into the GBA slot and holding the DS on its side, we have a Guitar Hero game, now with one less button.
I can be pissed about that.
It works incredibly well though. I'm just awful at Guitar Hero. My hand-eye coordination from Guitar Hero buttons to screen just never fully developed. But that doesn't take away from how special this device is. It even came with a guitar pick stylus that fits into the grip itself. This was a pretty popular title on the DS and spawned a few sequels, including Band Hero, which also used the guitar grip but had a drum pad as well. This isn't nearly as endearing. It's a silicone sleeve you put your DS Lite into. God, these kind of cases always feel like somebody just wiped their nose with them. You slide that all on and you have drum pads. It works. It's kind of cute, just not nearly as ingenious as the guitar grip, but a worthy attempt at playing drums on the go. And keep in mind, these accessories are made with the DS Lite in mind. The guitar grip requires this adapter to work on the original DS because of design differences, and the Band Hero drums just straight up won't work. And if you try to play with the guitar grip on the DSi or DSi XL, reality sets in. They removed the GBA slot, but included an SD card slot, and as a kid, I had an idea for a version of Guitar Hero on tour for the DSi that connected to that port. Still proud of that idea. To give the DSi credit, there were some games exclusive to it that wouldn't work on a DS Lite or DS, like games that use the cameras. But 2 games found a way: Face Training and Face Training. This game focuses on strengthening your facial muscles, giving you a tight smile. And the only way for it to accurately insult you is with a camera. The Facing Scan camera was only released in Japan and came bundled with Face Training alongside a stand for the DS. You can pop it on here sideways and use this thing on a desk more easily, and it's pretty surreal to see camera footage on a DS or DS Lite. It works across both models, even the original DS. Since the device fits flush with the model, you have a jump scare option. Face Training was later released for the DSi in Europe with no need for the Facing Scan. Still came with a stand for the system though. But nothing will beat the magnetic stand, released only in Japan. This was primarily marketed alongside games like Personal Trainer Cooking due to the fact the magnets can turn any fridge into a smart fridge. The stand plugs into the GBA slot and holds the DS up that way. It's like somebody holding you up by your nostrils. But yeah, you can set it up for at a table by opening up the bottom and adjusting the angle a bit. It comes with a dangling stylus. Your question was answered. But here's a similarly designed accessory, the slide controller, bundled with the Japan exclusive Slide Adventure Mag Kid. It receives power from slot 2 and turns your DS into a mouse.
Nobody told them the definition of necessary?
This is weird. So you move the DS around and control the character on screen as if the DS is a computer mouse, but the screen for the computer mouse is a computer mouse. And it works. The slide controller is one of the most bizarre things Nintendo has pushed out, just because of how seemingly unneeded it is. But it makes for an experience that can't really be replicated elsewhere. I mean, a computer, sure, but just moving the entire device around like a mouse makes this wholly unique. Speaking of motion-based gimmicks, Activision released a motion pack for the DS. This was a third-party accessory giving the DS some motion capabilities, specifically for Tony Hawk's motion. I move the DS, I move Tony Hawk in the game. It works okay, but at the end of the day, it just makes you want a real voodoo doll. Sega released a card reader that plugged into with a slot, only in Japan, supporting just 3 titles. This is pretty much the same deal as Nintendo's e-reader for the Game Boy Advance, but even more useless. I don't have any of the games or cards for it, but if it's anything like the e-reader, run! The Easy Piano was a third-party accessory that turned your DS into like 2/8 of a piano. All right, here's the deal with this. This is a cute toy that is completely bundled and supported by the wrong game. Easy Piano is mostly a minigame collection just about music, and when it does use the piano, it's like mostly just a noisemaker. It's kind of cool to hear piano noises from the DS after hitting some keys, but that's like kind of all there is to do with this thing. Rock Band 3, that featured keyboards as playable instruments. It got a DS version that used no accessories. This would have been perfect for that game, but no. Ever heard of a Greek tragedy? Well, now you have.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, this is a dumb piano anyways. If you really want to learn piano, there are far better and more realistic options out there to do so with. So let's talk about a DS accessory with real-world applications. I am, of course, talking about diabetes.
The Bayer Digit Blood Glucose Meter plugs into the GBA slot. Naturally, it is a glucose meter after all. Now, I couldn't get diabetes in time to discuss how this actually works, but I don't really need to. It reads your blood sugar levels and is designed to give kids with diabetes more incentive to read them more often. So alongside this device, you get a diabetes turn-based RPG, Knock 'em Down's World Fair. You get power-ups in the game for checking your blood sugar levels. The GBA slot deserves an award. There's so much it can do. Help with diabetes, put the DS on a fridge, with Tony Hawk. We can even turn our GBA slot-based devices into iPods with the Nintendo MP3 player. It's just a GBA cartridge, but it released during the DS's reign and mainly pushes them on the box. It's a cartridge with an SD card slot and headphone jack. You pop it in and you can play your media files this way. The name Nintendo MP3 player was a localization of the Play-Yan series of MP3 players Nintendo released for the Game Boy Advance only in Japan, with the Nintendo MP3 player only releasing in Europe. I would have killed for something like this back in the day. Just seeing video files play via games on the DS was mind-blowing. There were a handful more GBA slot-based accessories for the DS. Taito released a paddle controller, which is apparently incredible for games like Arkanoid, but I couldn't find one. I got the diabetes meter, leave me be. Last one I have here is the pedometer for my weight loss coach. It really makes you think, why don't most pedometers have this plug? It's interesting my weight loss coach comes with a pedometer while my stop smoking coach doesn't come with Nicorette.
But it's just a pedometer. When you wear it, you have the audacity to flash the Ubisoft logo to everybody. So yeah, it's worth it. Ubisoft did a lot of these life help games during this era. I believe they stopped because they realized they weren't good at it. Developed with a professional nutritionist. Just one. But pedometers were a big deal on the Nintendo DS. It's probably why Nintendo built one into the Nintendo 3DS. They love health. Especially dog health.
Personal trainer walking, part of the same series as personal trainer cooking. You gotta burn it off somehow. This comes with the activity meter. Yes, you can track the dog's life rhythm. This game is pretty interesting because it actually includes its own meat creator from the Wii in the game, and the game cartridge itself is an infrared sensor. It actually concerned me when I saw it. I thought it was a bootleg since the cartridge is so much darker than usual. I never knew this is what the black market was like. Nah, it's darker because it's an IR sensor and it interacts with the activity meter this way. But did I mention you get 2 of them? 2 activity meters, 2 clips, too hard. Much like my weight loss coach's pedometer is a pedometer, though it is much slimmer and more discreet than Ubisoft's. Watch out, Fitbit. But the more well-known pedometer for the Nintendo DS was the Pokewalker. Bundled with Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, this was a pedometer that allowed you to take your Pokemon from the game for walks, which would open up in-game content based on how many steps you take. This is obviously a gimmick thrown in there to appease parents who were mortified at the fact that children weren't using their legs, so they put this out using the same IR technology as the activity meter. In the end, the Pokewalker ended up being one of the most accurate pedometers ever created at the time. See, Nintendo was at their best when they have no reason to be. The Pokewalker was later repurposed for Wii Fit U. They used the exact same shell and technology, but one thing the Pokewalker has in comparison is that it can be misread as Pokewalker.
Keeping track here.
Speaking of Pokemon, here we have Learn with Pokemon.
No!
Learn with Pokemon Typing Adventure is an educational game for the Nintendo DS, only released in Europe and Japan. This title implies that other Pokemon educational games were intended to follow this, but you don't need further education as long as you can type Chimchar. This came with the Nintendo Wireless Keyboard, a very broad name for an accessory that only worked with this one title. It's a Bluetooth keyboard, which does mean you can use it on other devices, but the DS doesn't have Bluetooth, so they injected Bluetooth into the game cartridge. Just the different things they're willing to do to make things work on the DS amazes me. The game also comes with a stand for the DS, which is nice, but you can just set it up like a laptop on a desk, and that works perfectly fine. It's just a typing game. Type the Pokemon names. I may not know how to type any other words, but now Chimchar I can do blindfolded. After learning, it's time to go recreational, or in other words, recreate. A Nintendo DS TV tuner. Yeah, you could watch television on your DS, only in Japan, but this isn't a new idea. Other handhelds have had TV tuners released for them, and portable TV sets have been a thing for decades. This would have been awesome when I had my DS Lite. I remember seeing one of my friends getting a smartphone that was able to receive digital TV signals, and they could watch Nickelodeon at the funeral. When I was a kid, the coolest thing ever would have been to watch TV wherever I wanted. In the backseat of a car at school, it was the coolest idea ever. And if I was in Japan and wanted to be laughed at in public, it could have been a reality. This doesn't work here. But if I was in Japan in 2007, it might have. Even if no signal comes in, it's a really cool nugget of Nintendo history. Just seeing the software, it feels right at home with other Nintendo products at the time. So this one's pretty fun. A calligraphy pen for the game Calligraphy Training, only released in Japan. This game teaches how to properly write out kanji because it ain't easy. Like what, that's not a box? It's all in the amount of brush strokes you use, and with the regular DS stylus, you can play it, but it defeats the purpose of the title. It's genuinely here to teach proper calligraphy, so the included pen, while nothing special, it's literally just a longer stylus modeled after a brush, it definitely helps. The feeling of writing in this game feels uncanny. It's so natural, but what if they went a bit further? What if it supported the Rumble Pack? I'll stay out of politics. There's another stylus alternative on the DS, the Thumbstrap.
And so it comes to this.
The DS had a few 3D titles on it, but just a single D-pad, so to make these games feel more natural, Nintendo would implement touchscreen controls, but to make them feel even more natural, they included this wrist strap with the original model. It has this little piece of plastic at the end. You wrap it around your thumb, and you have Nintendo's answer to having no analog stick. They could have just put in an analog stick. You got all this trouble to make up for the lack of a stick, which just makes me ask, why didn't you just add a stick? I refuse to take baths, I instead bathe in body spray. Now there was a third-party stylus in the works called the Smart Stylus by PDP. I don't think this ever released, rather it was only shown to the press and was more so a tech demo. It would connect to an adapter plugged into the GBA slot and would allow for the stylus to rumble and light up and play sounds based on the game being played. It was supposed to be bundled with the game Squeeballs.
And?
I don't think it was. A game called Squeeballs Party was released, and there was a bundle containing a stylus, but it wasn't the Smart Stylus, which leads me to believe this never came out. There's the direction sensor card, which who the hell knows what this is? This was probably going to be a first-party peripheral or a variant of the Nintendo DS game card that could track motion.
I believe it was used for this stargazing application, but that never released here in North America.
At least a headset did. The Nintendo DS headset. That's right. Nintendo basically refused to make a wireless headset for any game console except the DS. You could use this with Pokemon and Brain Age.
You do math like a bitch.
Yeah, so very few games actually use this for voice chat. Games like Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, Metroid Prime Hunters, Advance Wars Days of Ruin, but you could use it as just a regular microphone for games that simply use the microphone. I personally feel like this is a fairly pointless accessory. It's not like there were a ton of voice chat enabled games anyways, and even then, they pretty much all just use the built-in mic, which yeah, that's gonna be worse, but who the hell was expecting DS voice chat to be good in the first place? Here we have a cleaning kit. This helps us get dust and grime out of both cartridge slots. Me personally, I'm okay. I have a tub. Screen protectors, yep, you need those, especially for the bottom screen. But I never really was a big screen protector guy. I don't know, I consider any scratches to have stories behind them.
This was when I was a jackass. This was just when I was a fucking idiot.
Some accessories had both Wii and DS branding, like the official Wi-Fi USB connector and some SD cards, which, yeah, branded SD cards, so everybody can see you have an official Nintendo SD card, when it's always gonna be inside the system.
Well, that's pretty much most of the Nintendo DS accessories ever released. Or at least the first 10% of them. Starter packs, pretty much any combination of case, stylus, game card container, charger you can possibly think of. They were sold, and usually endorsed and licensed by Nintendo. Like the starter kit, or the starter kit, or the starter kit, or the essentials kit, or the essential kit. Character-based accessories, for if the TV tuner wasn't enough for bullies. Game card storage units. These hold one each, will ensure you don't lose your game cards. They're the same size as one. Stylus packs, Crayola! These support the claims that crayons can do anything. Game & Go kits for when you really need a case, but you really need Howie Mandel. There are so many accessory packs, and they're all pretty much variations of the exact same thing. Value pack. Okay, so the stylus is longer than my leg. 6 game card cases. Each of them hold only one each, so does this really help me travel with them? Does this help me travel with multiple at once? Each of these can only hold one game card each. Does this stop me from swallowing them? No! Hey y'all, Scott here. Gosh, I want to play this video game, but it's just too complicated. I don't know. Bingo!
How do you know Grandpa will like a video game?
I just know.
But hey, sometimes it can be hard to tell, which is where Nintendo comes into the picture. See, during the reign of the Nintendo DS and Wii systems, more people than ever before were picking these things up to play a bit of Brain Age, Nintendogs, Wii Fit, games that anybody could understand regardless of their level of gaming know-how. Which is why Nintendo started labeling these games as, you fucking idiot, you don't know as much as I did. Seriously, you later known as Touch Generations.
Yeah, you ever pick up a game from one of these two systems and notice that little logo in the corner? I mean, it was pretty easy to put two and two together. Pretty much any game with the Touch Generations logo was very accessible and appealed to a much wider demographic than 25-year-old white boy. Makes you wonder why they chose the name Touch Generations when they could have gone for the much more blatant, buy this, grandpa. Because what does this mean? Is this logo supposed to speak to the casuals like, that's me? But hey, anything to help grandpa buy me a video game can't hurt. Grandpa, that's arsenic!
Touch Generations isn't a series per se, rather a marketing line, giving specific DS and Wii games the logo to show how they're fine-tuned for a general audience, unlike some games like Fossil Fighters. Dad, stay away! This logo was introduced on June 5th, 2006 here in North America with the games Big Brain Academy and Magnetica, and shortly after, many previously released titles would be re-released with the logo now in the box art's corner. Was anything else changed?
The printer used more ink.
This logo is something added after the fact. It never really felt like Nintendo went out of their way to create Touch Generations games. They would make their games and decide later on if it fit the requirements. Now, what were the requirements? This line spanned dozens upon dozens of titles across North America, Europe, Australia, and Japan, some only carrying the Touch Generations logo in specific countries, while either releasing in other regions like normal or staying exclusive to specific ones. If you want to experience everything Touch Generations had to offer, I mean, man, there are over 50 titles with this branding, and some games that have it in North America don't have it in Europe, and vice versa. There's so many Japanese exclusives. Did everybody who comes up to me for advice on where to start with the Touch Generations games?
There's nobody here. Thank God, I got nothing.
Might as well take a look at all of these to see what makes a Touch Generations game a Touch Generations game. Going in no particular order, let's start with Nintendogs. Nintendogs was an absolute phenomenon, being released as numerous different versions, which just changed what breed of dogs you can select at the start. This was one of the best pet simulators of all time. I mean, look at how well animated these dogs are for being 3D models on the damn Nintendo DS. It effectively used the DS touchscreen to the best of its ability, showing how this is a game that just wouldn't have been the same on the PlayStation Portable or on a home console with a standard controller. You needed a touchscreen. You needed a microphone to scream at mammals. And it's all so damn intuitive. It's the first input method you think of when you see a polygonal dog. It all came together. Playing it now, the original Nintendogs is ridiculously simple. It's just a solid loop of feed dog, clean dog, play dog, walk dog, train dog, win cash. It's still incredibly charming, but I do think a lot of that feeling comes from nostalgia. I played this to death back in 2007. Everything from what you were doing down to how you were doing it was so damn novel. Thus, let's do some math here. We have a pet simulator, which looking at the craze surrounding Tamagotchis, we know those are big. Using a touchscreen and microphone in 2005 to do things like pet a virtual animal and also do some light voice recognition, which I'm pretty sure around this time we were all struck at light up shoes. Couple that with the pet we were raising being dogs, puppies, not some weird ass creature made up for the game. Now, you show this to Dad and he goes, "That's a dog." Pretty easy to see how Nintendogs appeal to everybody, with its simple and intuitive controls, easy to grasp concept with a theme most general consumers wouldn't be embarrassed to admit they're playing a game about. Ew, you're playing that? And not the sequel? Nintendogs was destined for success, especially in 2005 when we really hadn't seen something like this work so well and be so understandable. And this was all a part of then Nintendo president Satoru Iwata's Blue Ocean strategy, which was to focus on a market that was untapped rather than compete in a market that's already well established, in this case being more core gaming experiences you'd find on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Let's try and attract other people to the world of gaming with different games, simpler games, controllable and intuitive and fun ways. Thus, the Wii, Nintendo DS, and the Touch Generations line as a whole start to make a whole lot more sense. Hey, you can hate these types of games all you want. I'm a gamer. I don't want to pet a dog. I want to f my wife. But you can't deny these led to the insane sales numbers we're seeing with gaming these days. Touch Generations introduced so many to the world of video games who later went on to try more in-depth experiences. So yeah, these games are far more important than I think people give them credit for.
Remove this from the timeline and I might be missing a limb.
100 classic books! What were you expecting? As far as I'm concerned, this game does everything it sets out to do, unlike others. Where the are the slugs? This title was developed by Genius Seniority after they made Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. I think Nintendo caught on to how that game used words. So on to 100 classic books for them, a collection of 100 public domain writings from the 1800s. These are all free. What was stopping them from doing 101? And with how tiny the DS screens are, they had to blow up the text, so you pretty much get 2 sentences per page now. A book like The Time Machine by H.G. Wells is normally around 84 pages long. In 100 classic books, using the smallest font size option, it is now 649 pages long. And that's just the price you have to pay $20 for 100 public domain books. Come on, man, I can print off PDFs of all these books for free. Okay, so do it. The point is, Nintendo. This is one of the most non-games Nintendo's ever created. It doesn't even have an ESRB rating. Though we do have quizzes to take in order to figure out what book we're in the mood for. For what it is, I do find 100 classic books to have a ton of pre-smartphone revolution charm, you know? Something that has absolutely no use today, but you can think back to the late 2000s, early 2010s, and see how this could be kind of convenient. Sure, e-readers like the Kindle and smartphones and tablets were taking off, but they weren't nearly as popular as they are today. So the idea of reading a book on your DS wasn't too absurd. And that can be attributed to the fact many Touch Generations titles, including this one, use the Nintendo DS on its side, like a book. For casual users, I bet this felt far more natural, especially in a game where you're using the stylus to write. And the most iconic title that did this was easily Brain Age. This, alongside Nintendogs, dominated the list of best-selling Nintendo DS games. They helped propel the DS as a standard in anybody's pocket, young or old. It didn't matter, everybody owned Brain Age, because everybody was stupid enough to think it would work. You really thought you'd get smarter by doing 10 math problems a day? It's no wonder the United States cracked down on games claiming to train your brain.
Thank God.
Well, while a game like Brain Age isn't gonna make you smarter, it for sure can make you sharper. Presented by Dr. Kawashima, real guy, just in this game, they took some artistic liberties. He was responsible for loads of studies and eventually a book detailing how basic math problems and other mental exercises can aid in avoiding issues like dementia, for example. Now that doesn't mean this is a surefire way to cure that kind of stuff, but it can help many stay on top of things, and what better way to utilize this research than to create a video game out of it to make it as easy as possible for users to follow Dr. Kawashima's advice. Quick math problems, puzzles, and mental exercises presented in a way that feels more like a high score based video game rather than homework. That's what makes Brain Age special. It has some of the most basic, boring sounding content at its core, math, but turns it into something where you want to get better at solving problems and faster at solving problems. Oh my God! That's 5 gallons of water! Writing out numbers and letters with the stylus mostly works okay. Nintendo, whatever you say in front of me, you can say in front of my 5s. We even have a Sudoku mode. Well, I have some books, so we'll decline. But let's be fair here. Sudoku in Brain Age may be the greatest adaptation of the game. I love how you only have 5 mistakes you can make. It really makes you critically think a lot more, and when you get a number right, the ding sound is so satisfying.
It's easy to write Brain Age off as just math homework with gimmicks to make it all feel more gamey, but there's far more depth to it than it may initially seem. It actually incentivizes you to get better and better at math problems while also being fun.
It must be a witch!
Following up that title was Brain Age 2, which is less of a sequel and more of a second volume. It's not like Brain Age brought to the next level, it's more so Brain Age with different minigames. So I'd say Brain Age 2 isn't really Brain Age 2, it's another Brain Age. These are completely interchangeable. If you didn't play one of them, I don't think that means you're missing out on anything.
I think that just means you're a coward.
But just a few months after the first Brain Age's release, Nintendo launched Big Brain Academy. What does this game do differently? Deserve at least a teen rating. I never realized how close to each other these two released, which definitely makes me question why. Big Brain Academy is more of a game than Brain Age, which makes me feel like I'm some kind of guinea pig doing an experiment. Big Brain is more colorful and lively, with less of an emphasis on math and more on brain teasers, I guess. It's really hard to say, oh, well, this is why Brain Age exists, and this is why Big Brain Academy exists. Because while they're visually distinct, at the end of the day, these are pretty much the same type of thing. I guess Brain Age is more aimed at older people, while Big Brain Academy is targeted at kids.
Okay. Flash Focus was marketed similarly to Brain Age, having a comparable tagline on the front cover. This one's all about training your eyes, being more aware of your surroundings while also staying relaxed. This one doesn't hit nearly as hard as the brain training games. See, those worked because the minigames included were very much the type of things you'd find in homework, but now made fun. You know, that was the point of that title. It gave it purpose, it made it unique. The activities in Flash Focus are like follow the ball under the cup, which is the most overused type of minigame. You'd find that in any Mario Party, yet here, it's stripped down to the bare minimum visually. Sure, that was fine in Brain Age, but here, it feels like they forgot to finish the game. Other exercises can be more visually appealing, but like, this does nothing for me. How is this training my vision? I'm just playing a boxing mini game. If this thing was actually used to judge one's sight, oh, no more corrective lenses for me. Sudoku Gridmaster. Now, I did really enjoy Sudoku in Brain Age, so a full game of nothing but? Why wouldn't you just buy Brain Age? That had Sudoku plus Brain Age. Sudoku Gridmaster is just Sudoku, and it isn't as intuitive or snappy as the mode in Brain Age. There are 400 puzzles in this one though, compared to Brain Age's 100, but after the 100th Sudoku puzzle, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to remember the solutions to the first one, so who cares? Just replay them. This is a perfectly fine Sudoku game at the end of the day, but it's similar to Big Brain Academy in the sense that it has so many of the same things Brain Age has, while also being published by Nintendo within a 3-month window of Brain Age's release. Why not just buy Brain Age? Well, why not be the Gridmaster?
Damn, they got me.
Crosswords DS, or Crossword DS. Has Nintendo ever officially said how to pronounce this title? That's the price you pay for being cute. This is a collection of crossword puzzles. And word searches. This is just nice, you know? There's not much more to it. It feels like Sudoku from Brain Age, but crosswords. There's loads of puzzles, word searches if you're a fucking baby. This, I can see my parents enjoying quite a lot, so it really seems like the Touch Generations line is for them.
With a gun to their head.
Yeah, let's get into some titles that carry the logo that just really should have carried anything else. Not that these are bad games, far from it, but like, Jesus, dude, you're scaring Grandpa. Elite Beat Agents, Rhythm Heaven, Hotel Dusk, Room 215, these are all Touch Generations games, much like how I'm one too. These are all DS classics that are, yes, easier to understand and pick up and play compared to the Dark Spire. But I mean, to my dad, there's not a damn difference between these two. These are a lot more flashy, in your face, and complex compared to the other titles. These are actual video games. Elite Beat Agents is one of the DS's best. It's a rhythm game based on a Japanese-only title that used these guys instead of agents. North America loves agents. But we also love, like, ducks, so I'd be interested to see the reason behind this choice. This game is pure wacky-ass Nintendo. The same wacky-ass Nintendo you'd only expect to see in the Japan-only joints, but no, this is a heavily westernized version of a game from Japan. The visuals are all so mesmerizing to watch. It's over the top and knows that. This game just aims to be fun, not only with presentation, but the gameplay as well. Tap the circles that appear in order to the beat. It's very easy to understand, but incredibly difficult to master, which is a crucial element of some of the greatest games of all time. And do they have a cover of Skater Boy? There's only 19 songs featured throughout the whole game, and they are all covers, but I will give Nintendo this. They are all licensed tracks from actual artists, unlike other rhythm games they've done, where the most they can do is the fucking Pledge of Allegiance. But here, these are legitimate songs, and while they are covers, they're pretty good covers. It all just adds up to this being an essential game in anybody's DS library. Except for Dad. Well, yeah, the gameplay is easy to understand. This does stick out quite a bit as a Touch Generations game. It feels more like they made it one to potentially ease casual players to try something with some kick to it, and thus help a game in a brand new series sell a little better. Damn, if that's what this logo can do, why not put it on everything? Rhythm Heaven is another game I find to be a little peculiar here. I mean, the way Nintendo advertised it initially was almost like this was another form of Brain Age. Oh, I have to get my rhythm training in for the day. They went above and beyond to attract the casual audience here, creating a whole marketing campaign centered around Beyonce just simply playing the game. Oh man, if Beyonce's playing it, it must be real. Pretty wild the game was marketed like this initially, because I don't know about you, but when I think Rhythm Heaven these days, my mind doesn't go to something they'd get. This series can be so damn difficult sometimes, and the DS one, for me personally, is more complicated than the other entries. Okay, complicated. A branch is more complicated than a stick. Just how the others simply use one button, this one we use the touchscreen, and flick it sometimes. Ooh. Regardless, Rhythm Heaven is a joy. One of the most unique and lovable rhythm games of all time. Even if you're real bad at it, you still end each minigame with a smile. Unlike Elite Beat Agents, which actively is telling you exactly when you need to tap the circle, Rhythm Heaven plays everything out in a way where just glancing at it, some people may not realize it's a music game. These are all completely different minigames, but at their core, they're all about keeping the beat, listening to audio cues, and watching the visuals to know the exact right time to tap or hold or flick. It's really cool because something like the Rhythm Rally game, you could technically play that like it was just a standard ping pong game. It would be damn hard, but that prepares you for the rest of life. My uncle died.
I've dealt with harder.
Rhythm Heaven is so unique with how it crafts rhythm minigames that conceptually have nothing to do with rhythm, and because of that, it simultaneously creates a rhythm game that doesn't just involve hitting the right button when the icon hovers over the right area like any other rhythm game. I think contextualizing rhythm in these ways can actually really help you understand music better. I find myself nodding my head to the beat way more playing Rhythm Heaven than in Guitar Hero, for example. And because of that, yeah, honestly, now I can see why Nintendo may have marketed the game like this. In some ways, it is kind of like Brain Age for music, just with a much more fun presentation. Don't get me wrong, this looks fun in one of those less fun than Rhythm Heaven kind of ways, like Taxes. But out of all the games under the Touch Generations label, Rhythm Heaven is one of the most unique, well-designed, and everlasting experiences. We'll get to True Swing Golf, but for now, Hotel Dusk Room 215. Finally, something other than gas prices to confuse the elders. A point-and-click adventure game with 3D first-person movement using the touchscreen. Translation for the casuals?
It just says no.
I get why Nintendo may have considered this a game anybody can get into, a mystery visual novel type experience. Most people can understand that, though I feel this gets a bit too ambitious for a general audience. An impressive game on the DS by all accounts. I mean, they really pushed to create a unique experience visually and gameplay wise. There's not much else like Hotel Dusk, but I feel like a game like Professor Layton is far more casual friendly, with that also being a puzzle game with point and click elements. But guess what got the Touch Generations blessing? Well, that too. Electroplankton. Don't fucking try that. Another game that, oh, I already fucked up. I think it's a bit much to call this a game. It's pretty much a musical, visual, interactive fish moment.
Oh, it's one of those, huh?
Electroplankton is more of an experiment, one that encourages the player to harness their artistic side, to make eloquent movements via the touchscreen, to craft unique music heard nowhere else. That's the funny way to say, poke the fish, they scream loud. I don't dislike this experience, but that's all it is, an experience. An experience I find fairly limited in its appeal, one that was sold for $30. You can save the sounds you create. There's nothing to do other than move the electroplankton around to make interesting noises that can sometimes end up sounding like actual music. It's something you could imagine being displayed in an art or science museum, something you could walk right up to and interact with and then move on to the next attraction, which is exactly what the designer Toshio Iwai was known for, interactive art focusing on music that looks exactly like Electroplankton. Within that context, Electroplankton makes so much more sense, just not as a $30 retail game. It retains the spirit of Toshio Iwai's work, but because of that, it really does feel like an attraction you admire for 5 minutes and then move on. So there's value here as an art piece, just not as a game. It's completely understandable as to why it received a limited release here in North America, and how later on they divided the game up into 10 separate applications on the Nintendo DSi shop for 2 bones a pop. The problem is, I already thought the game was lacking in content as a full release. Now you're releasing 1/10 of Electroplankton? This is a crumb! But as a Touch Generations title, I mean, I think Mom could play this. I'm just not sure she'd know why she's playing it. Really interesting and undeniably unique, Electroplankton is a cool thing. I just think it needs more meat on its bones. If you're gonna be more art piece than game, that's fine. You just can't expect me to accept it 16 years later. Now, if we want something that's more of a game, we can't do much better than the original Clubhouse games. A collection of mostly tabletop games, cards, checkers, chess, dominoes, and even some lounge-style games like darts, bowling, billiards. In total, there's 42 different games to choose from, with challenges to complete via mission mode, local multiplayer, or online multiplayer. How did they make this then release Sudoku by itself? Clubhouse Games is still an outstanding value. And these games are timeless, and these versions are still fun today. It's easy to see where they cut corners, though. I mean, one of the games is Soda Shake. Nintendo, I don't need you for this. I feel a bit spoiled because I actually played the 2020 follow-up on Nintendo Switch before the original, and the large icons and visual variety and quality really do make it a bit harder to play the one that started it all. I do find the user interface and text to be a bit too small and not as instantly understandable, intuitive, and inviting as its successor, but at the end of the day, Dots and Boxes is still Dots and Boxes. Though again, Nintendo, I don't need you for this. Clubhouse Games has so much value that it makes other Touch Generations titles feel lacking in comparison, like True Swing Golf. It's golf. I mean, this is perfectly fine. It uses the touchscreen effectively to swing your club, meaning, yeah, I'd say this is pretty easy for anybody to pick up and play. It's also golf. That's crazy. I can get 23 minutes out of a single blind on a controller, but True Swing Golf, I come out dry. Now Tetris DS, I'm coming out soaked. Yeah, this was a Touch Generations game, and while I understand why, it feels like anything but. Tetris is one of the most widely played and accessible games out there. So what's the version on one of the most widely played and accessible handhelds of all time like?
Oh my god, it's fucking Frog Mario!
It's Tetris for me! Tetris DS's visual identity is nothing but classic NES games by Nintendo. Super Mario Brothers, The Legend of Zelda, Donkey Kong, Metroid, Ice Climber. It oddly gives Tetris DS absolutely no identity of its own, yet a ton of character at the same time. And the sheer amount of modes on this player, like, Jesus Christ, they're just blocks, guys! One of the greatest Tetris games of all time. Touch Generations worthy? Of course, but like, why label this as the one for everybody? Well, keeping with the puzzle games, how about Planet Puzzle League? They're just giving planets to anybody. Puzzle League, also known as Anything But. Originally a Japanese-only title named Panel de Pon, later localized in North America as Tetris Attack, then receiving a sequel titled Pokemon Puzzle League, followed by Pokemon Puzzle Challenge, then Dr. Mario and Puzzle League, and now, none of the above. One of my favorite puzzle games. It's fucking garbage here. I mean, it's fine, but like, we go from the amazing personality and charm featured in the past games to what I think a robot sees. This is Puzzle League for those who can't feel. Like, would you want to hug space? No. The color yellow? Oh, any day. This game just feels so beaten down with the casual stick. They're trying to make it as bland as possible to appeal to the everyman. And I think that ruins a lot of what makes Puzzle League so enjoyable. And plus, using the touchscreen to slide pieces around just isn't as fun or satisfying as using the buttons for me. I mean, all of this can be changed via the options. We can choose to just use buttons, swap between book style and normal style. There's even loads of different themes to choose from. But this lack of identity is baked into Planet Puzzle League's DNA. This is a meaty game overall. It has loads of modes and things to do. I think it's quite good. Probably one of the best in the overall very small and niche Puzzle League series. Though to me, it's one of the most forgettable entries due to how bland everything is. They brain-aged my Tetris Attack. It's like they marketed this as a brain booster, something to play once a day. If you wanted to make Tetris Attack educational, just keep the damn Yoshins and have them spout history facts. Now, Planet Puzzle League wasn't the only older Nintendo series to get a Touch Generations coat of paint. Picross DS, a new take on the Picross puzzle game formula introduced with Mario's Picross on Game Boy. And while a whole slew of variations and sequels were released in Japan, Picross DS was only the second Picross game to get a release outside of that country. Well, it's not Mario's Picross anymore, so I guess he didn't get the prenup. Just because Mario was featured in the original game, it didn't make this a Mario game in my opinion. There were a couple of Mario-themed puzzles, but for the most part, the puzzles comprised of pretty generic things. So Picross DS being just a themeless puzzle game isn't heart-wrenching like Planet Puzzle League was. This is Picross. Use the touchscreen now, which works perfectly. There's a bunch of puzzles to complete. Yeah, I think this fits within the Touch Generations label. Sure, it was originally a Game Boy game, but it definitely feels at home right next to the other titles like Crosswords DS and Sudoku Gridmaster. I can see casuals understanding and enjoying this one quite a bit.
Oh my god, we have a fatality! Not ease of use!
Picross 3D, an interpretation of the standard Picross formula, but now in a 3D space. Definitely harder to jump into, but far more satisfying to master. The Picross 3D is a wonderful puzzler, probably the most unique across the entire Touch Generations line, which isn't saying much. Magnetica was actually one of the first titles with the logo on them. This is a game that everybody's played a variant of at one point or another. It's officially gone under numerous other names like Puzzloop and Ballistic, and was pretty much copied in games like Zuma. It's just a color matching puzzle game. You get random colored balls to shoot into a twisting lineup of colors, shoot it into a space where you can clear a bunch of the same color. It's fun for a bit, not much else to this one in particular, just a fine version of something that has a million different clones elsewhere. Unlike Master of Illusion. You want to talk about games that ain't games? This is a magic kit. You dare make this for a general audience and feature this character? Mom, it's Barbara the Bat!
That's not a bat, those are boobs.
Master of Illusion comes in this big box containing a pack of playing cards for you to test out some magic acts with. The game teaches you step by step on how to perform some tricks while also using the DS in some performances. The character Barbara the Bat was from a mostly Japan exclusive DS series, Daigaso Band Brothers, which got a Europe release, Jam with the Band, though never came over here to North America. Outside of a few Super Smash Bros. Appearances and Super Mario Maker, Master of Illusion is her only game in this country. I always knew this slogan was full of shit. Keeping with the tutorial game genre, Art Academy. Did you know this game released as two separate smaller titles on the Nintendo DSi shop in 2009 as Art Academy First Semester and Second Semester, with the boxed release combining the two a year later in 2010? I never knew that, I just assumed the DSiWare games came afterwards. Well, Art Academy is exactly what it sounds like. It's not a great digital art program, but it does a sufficient job in giving you some basic art lessons. It's all about teaching you the basics, laying the foundation for what may become a major hobby in the future, which is what the Personal Trainer series was all about. Calling it a series is pushing it though. All of these games, Personal Trainer Cooking, Math, and Walking, were all developed by different people, released with different names in different regions, and all look and play nothing alike. But Nintendo of America decided to give each of them the Personal Trainer title. But then Personal Trainer Cooking got a sequel, and they got rid of the Personal Trainer and replaced it with America's Test Kitchen.
And there was a fifth game in the lineup as well, Personal Trainer Depression.
Personal Trainer Math doesn't really try to be anything special at all, it's just a math educational game. Personal Trainer Cooking and America's Test Kitchen Let's Get Cooking are fine little pieces of cookbook software, and Personal Trainer Walking is definitely the most Nintendo-like of the bunch, being one of the few DS games to feature Mii's and coming with pedometers to track your steps. But this isn't much of a game, rather software to analyze your walking and encourage you to walk more. When Personal Trainer Math is the most game-like of the bunch, you know we've gone too deep into the Touch Generations line. What's left? Mystery Case Files Millionaire? It's Where's Waldo, but without Waldo. So it's Where's Waldo? Where the f is he? This is a long-running PC game series that Nintendo licensed for the DS, which is definitely interesting. They could have just made their own, but hey, this is a perfectly fine little hidden object game. Nothing extraordinary, but nothing bad either. And that goes for the majority of the Touch Generations lineup on the Nintendo DS. There are some standout titles here, some that revolutionized the gaming industry. But for the most part, these are incredibly simple games, sometimes to a fault. They may be so simple they're on the verge of predatory, like assuming some chucklehead's gonna buy Sudoku Gridmaster. But for the most part, these are all quality enough and help push the gaming industry to include everybody, not just pre-existing video game fans. Which is why the line extended to the Nintendo Wii. Well, that makes no sense. Touch Generations on Wii is so damn minuscule, I have to ask what the point of it even was. Only a handful of titles here in North America received the branding, the first of which was Big Brain Academy Wii Degree, with the rest being a few of the Wii series titles. Strangely, games like Wii Play and Wii Party were excluded from the line here in North America, though they received it in other countries, with games like Endless Ocean 1 and 2 being labeled as such only in Europe. With these being every game with the branding worldwide, and these being every game with the branding in North America, damn Nintendo, you could have saved some ink, man. Not only does this feel a little out of place considering, well, I mean, I can't touch my Wii, but the bar for what should be labeled Touch Generations makes no sense to me. The Mystery Case Files got a follow-up on Wii, the Malgrave Incident, not a Touch Generations title. Over on the DS, games like Professor Layton, Polarium, Meteor, Style Savvy, hell, the Nintendo DS browser. Why these weren't branded, but games like Hotel Dusk and Planet Puzzle League were, baffle me. I guess Nintendo just stopped valuing the brand as years went on. They kept making games in some of these series, they still do, which truly does hit home how Touch Generations was merely just an advertising tool outside of Japan. Inside, though, it's obvious to me that the lineup of Touch Generations games in Japan were far more connected to one another. They even released a Touch Generations series soundtrack CD over there, containing a variety of music from casual games and applications from the Wii and DS. I never knew math and dogs shared a universe.
There's even more to the Touch Generation series if we take a look outside of North America, but so much of it is tailor-made to the Japanese market that I got nothing. But that shows how each country considered Touch Generations to be a completely different thing. But that shouldn't take away the importance of this line. The branding itself was completely superfluous, though the essence of the brand and the types of games released under it helped propel gaming to be as big as it is today. So, thank you, Nintendogs.
Hey y'all, Scott here. What are we sinning today? I am pretty hungry. Lost. I should get more into eating food. I heard people love that stuff. The issue is, I don't know how to cook. And that's a problem with Thanksgiving around the corner. What am I gonna do if I can't cook? Be thankful? Thankfully, I have an escape route. There happens to be a Nintendo DS game that has all the answers. What am I doing here? This isn't personal trainer math.
The Nintendo DS era, when uncles were reborn. Your non-video game playing family members finally had something to do with their lives. While Nintendo did a lot to satiate their core audiences with the platform, they wanted to expand, give the rest of the population who didn't play video games what they wanted: world peace and 100 classic books. They introduced the Touch Generations label, used on games meant for geriatrics patients. These games were meant to be enjoyed and understandable to nearly anybody and everybody. While some were definitely still video games, others were more so applications, educational tools, self-help software. They snuck in a few video games under this label, like Elite Beat Agents. Oh, Grandma would totally understand this. But most Touch Generations games were on the level of Brain Age, Big Brain Academy, Crosswords DS, while the proud to be a gamer demographics wants these titles to burn in hell, I find them to be incredibly important. They broadened the gaming demographic and made way for applications of this nature on more accessible devices like smartphones, and personal trainer walking invented exercise. It's just interesting to see video games that aren't video games for a video game console. 100 Classic Books doesn't even have an ESRB age rating. Looks like I'm reading the kids Othello tonight. But what does have a rating? Personal Trainer Cooking, a cookbook for the Nintendo DS.
Now this is a game. See, 100 Classic Books doesn't have an age rating because they're books, old unedited public domain classics like Huck Finn. Personal Trainer Cooking is basically just a cookbook, but it has alcohol references, so it's rated E for everyone. So overall, 100 Classic Books is more appropriate for all ages. You ever actually read Huck Finn? Gourmet made easy. So easy you need to buy a DS to make mac and cheese. The DS Chef talks you through international recipes. They got the DS Chef in on this? That tears it. I'm ready. I'm gonna wear this chef's hat like it's 2027 and we're gonna make history and to a lesser extent, food. Oh Jesus God, what if I put in the wrong game?
Welcome to Personal Trainer Cooking.
Oh thank Christ.
Before we go any further, please adjust my voice to the speed you like.
Slow down there.
Is this a good speed for you?
I have very slow ears.
You're ready to start cooking tasty dishes from all over the world.
Adjusting talk speed is all it takes? Alright, it is a cookbook, so gotta check the settings first. Kitchen timers included. I own a kitchen, a DS, a will to cook, but not a timer. You can exclude certain ingredients based on dietary restrictions, which is pretty handy. According to my religion, stomach, and opinion, I can't eat food, so it's good I can exclude certain recipes. There's a built-in shopping list for when you're gathering ingredients with a calculator included. Anybody ever use Personal Trainer Cooking on an exam? There's basically an index of info here. This is pretty much a crash course in what's edible. There's even quick videos showcasing how to gut a fish, like this one where they gut a fish. This is going to be an insane turkey. Well, let's hop into the recipes where they give us a step-by-step procedure on how to use a spoon. Oh my god, there's a lot of stuff here. All different kinds of food from all different kinds of countries. But what do I want to prepare here? New England clam chowder? Okay, that's kind of funny. Okay, select a saucepan of an appropriate size for the number of servings you will be preparing. All I had was a milk jug. Okay, so here's all the ingredients I'm gonna need. Lucky for me, I already own food. I don't need to buy ingredients. Sure, I only have 2 of the listed ingredients, but I can make this work. First up, canned clams.
and 2/3 of a small onion. Thank God that's the only portion I had. Alright, I think we're ready to move on to the actual cooking portion. The game offers light voice recognition where you can scream at it to continue, repeat, or go to the last step of your instructions. It honestly works pretty well for a Nintendo DS game from 2008. It helps that you don't have to get your messy hands on the DS as you're working and you can just focus on the clams. First up,
Drain the clams with the sieve.
the sieve was never on the ingredients. Can I substitute it with clams? Let's cut the onion, clean off cutting utensil, substitute carrots with clams, potatoes with clams, bacon with clams. Now it's time to cook. I didn't mean to get salmonella this year. Might as well try another one. Oh, they got goulash in this? Damn it, it uses onions. I already used my whole 2/3 onion already. Well, you know what they say. If you can't make goulash, give up. But they got a mac and cheese recipe here. That's my favorite side dish at any Thanksgiving. Next to pretzels. I have to try though. Chop the cheddar, boil the macaroni. I realized I was using a saucepan and sieve as a cup holder, so lucky break there. Make the sauce, don't let it brown. Is green okay? Season with salt and pepper, mix everything together. I don't have macaroni noodles, so I'm just gonna use thick spaghetti. Voila, macaroni and cheese, Ohioan style.
Nice work.
Oh, we get achievements. You're goddamn right I made mac and cheese today. I can pretty much make anything now. We're gonna increase the difficulty. Chicken pot pie. You can't fit chicken in that! Damn it, this is an empanada. Oh! My rotisserie chicken's done. I gotta feed everybody and quick.
Oh boy, food and plates?
Oh yeah, I haven't eaten all of the month of November to prepare for this.
Happy Thanksgiving!
What is this?
It's a gourd, bitch.
What's in the crock pot?
Cereal.
You know what? I think I might go out for Thanksgiving this year.
There's this new place downtown called Steel Pretzels.
Oh, what do they have?
I don't know.
Guys, I busted my ass making all of this. The least you can do is eat everything. On you directly in front of you, you will see a failure. Personal trainer cooking is a sham. It doesn't even compete with the fucking pretzel restaurant down the street.
Best Thanksgiving ever.
These pretzels are actually stale. I don't know how they do it.
Even I can't cook these. Well, you can in fact follow the instructions and get a good understanding of how to effectively cook. The voice recognition kind of blows. I know I said it was impressive for a DS game in 2008, but my god, it kept on picking up the clanks of my silverware as me telling it to continue or repeat the instructions.
Use a whisk to stir the batter vigorously until smooth.
Which is why I will give this infamous excuse for poor video game performance towards my cooking ability. Why did my meals turn out bad? It was the controller, not me!
Hey y'all, Scott here. I've been working on my impression of Nintendo DSiWare. Watch, why the f was I born?
Buying the Nintendo DSi was my first instance of being an idiot. Oh, made it that far. Let's be fair, if Nintendo offered you a new design of something you already had with superfluous additions and crippling feature removals for nearly $200, you have to take advantage of that opportunity. This is the last time they'll do it this week. I'm not made of stone. Released on November 1st, 2008 in Japan and April 5th, 2009 over here in North America, the DSi was the third version of the Nintendo DS, a handheld that was already everybody's favorite bundle of atoms. The DS and DS Lite took the world by storm, all while being severely impaired. You can't tell me to reset the system after changing the clock and expect me to think everything's okay. Hell, you couldn't even remove a game card from the DS on the menu screen without it freezing. What's the point of having a menu screen then? I think Nintendo developed the system by candlelight. It was completely fair to expect an upgrade. I mean, you look at what the PSP was doing with its user interface and compare that to how the DS didn't even like you going into system settings. Like, I didn't even change anything. So in October of 2008, Nintendo announced that upgrade, the Nintendo DSi, hell-bent on being an actual system. The future was here, and it was $169.99. Yes, all right, let's get this over with. Scott was nearly 12 when he got his DSi at launch. That's why we shouldn't trust him. This was the first system I went out of my way to purchase by myself. I scrounged up the money and traded in my Nintendo DS Lite to help pay for it. I have no idea where I got that cash at that age. I guess the mutual fund worked out. But man, the thought I bought this and not something else like a PSP, an Xbox 360, PS3, anything but a revision of a handheld I already owned. But the DSi not only had one camera, It had 2.
Son of a bitch.
There is a lot more going on with this system. One of my favorite things about the original DS was the inclusion of PictoChat on board. It was like a little extra bonus game you could mess around with on the road trip if the game you brought lost its luster. I didn't even use it as it was intended most of the time, you know, sending messages to friends nearby. I liked making little flip books with the thing. And it felt like Nintendo realized how popular that application was, as the DSi has all kinds of stuff to mess around with. Nintendo DSi camera lets us take pictures and mutilate them. I spent hours with this, just messing around with the special effects and whatnot. Nintendo DSi sound, likewise, I adored. You could record small sound clips or import your own MP3s with the newly included SD card slot. I mainly just recorded my own sounds and absolutely demolished them. I loved it for tampering with evidence, but overall, it added to the amount of simple fun you could have with the Nintendo DSi without even plugging in a game, mainly because the software library was cut in half. What do you call this?
It was the only cake I had.
The Game Boy Advance slot was removed to maintain portability. Sure, I want to lose weight. I cut off my arm. I guess the new features help outweigh the lack of Game Boy Advance compatibility. At least they did at the time. These built-in apps were loads of fun, and the Nintendo DSi had a much heavier emphasis on internet connectivity, including a web browser built in, Facebook connectivity to upload your camera's pictures, plus the main replacement for the GBA slot, the Nintendo DSi Shop.
Yes, what better way to make up for stripping the compatibility of 1,500 Game Boy Advance games than to give me the ability to play WarioWare Snapped? I can think of a couple. Being able to download games to your Nintendo DS was a massive upgrade. I mean, remember, those original models froze if you looked at them funny. And with the rise of downloadable software on the 360, PS3, Wii, PSP, and especially cell phones, it just made sense to go in this direction. They should have named the games that released on this thing as a good idea. Instead, they named them DSiWare.
I don't know. I get it, it's Nintendo DSi software, combining the two, DSiWare, but they were obviously playing off of the name for Wii Digital Software, WiiWare, then had alliteration going for it. This is just a collection of letters. DSiWare games and applications were pretty much the only thing available on the Nintendo DSi shop, which makes me question why even give them a name like this. If they were offering classic games under the Virtual Console brand like they did with the Wii, I'd get that, you know, separate church and state. But they didn't offer Virtual Console titles here, which I think would have made perfect sense. The Wii Shop channel only offered Virtual Console games from home systems. The DSi Shop could have had retro titles from portables, maybe even Game Boy Advance games to make up for the missing slot. But nope! It was DSiWare games or bust, original downloadable games for the Nintendo DSi. It didn't matter because I was still excited as a kid. Even without wireless internet, I was frothing at the mouth to download some DSiWare stuff. I would wander around the front yard trying to mooch off of the neighbor's internet signal. Convincing my parents to get Wi-Fi was like convincing them I needed a lung transplant. I should know because Wi-Fi won out. But even beforehand, we were on vacation and the hotel we were staying at had free Wi-Fi, so I scrambled to test it out on my DSi, and oh my god, shitty email! I could browse the web, play online multiplayer, but most importantly, download software from the Nintendo DSi shop. And thankfully, Nintendo included $10 worth of Nintendo points to download games. Yes, this was still back when video game companies wanted to be cute about buying digital games, with 2,000 Nintendo points equating to 20 bones. Nintendo originally called these points Wii points for use only with the Wii Shop channel, but with the introduction of the Nintendo DSi, you could use the points on either a DSi or a Wii, eventually being renamed Nintendo points. Using a point system might have been a way to avoid you having to give Nintendo a W-2 for paying them so much, but hey, it worked. DSiWare titles range from free to costing $12 or so, and you'd find what you want on the shop by tapping through pages, 2 games at a time. My wife is going into labor, but where's WarioWare? The whole shop's aesthetic was modeled after the Wii Shop channel, and rightfully so. Both of these storefronts felt less like cold corporate marketing schemes and more so pleasant, relaxing elevators and shopping malls. Whenever I visit them, gosh, I should buy something. They even have a fun screen when you're downloading software, much like the Wii, except this one is based off of Super Mario Advance on the Game Boy Advance. That was one big final f*** you to the GBA slot. Unfortunately, the Nintendo DSi shop closed on March 31st, 2017.
Oh?
However, most of the DSiWare games released are available in the Nintendo 3DS eShop. Just looking up DSiWare, well, there they all are. Well, let's take a look at a good chunk of the releases, starting with a launch title for the DSi shop. WarioWare Snapped!
He just
fucking lost it! This was back when WarioWare was the big showcase for a new Nintendo system set of features, so here's a DSiWare title focused on the cameras for $5. WarioWare microgames that focus on using the DSi's camera is an awesome time. I'm also fucking dumb. So Snapped has you line up your body with these outlines via the inner camera, then you play the microgames by moving yourself around. In concept, not bad, but WarioWare games generally have hundreds of microgames, all played at about 5 seconds a piece, getting faster and faster as you progress. It's what makes the series fun. Snapped has 20 microgames that give you about 20 seconds to complete them, with each of the 4 characters only giving you 5 apiece. So we pick Wario and play his microgames, and the only challenge comes from getting the damn thing to work. So it's like playing with the photo booth application on the Mac, right? This isn't like a camera that can sense fear. No, it's just a basic camera, and even saying that's being generous. Thus, the fact they got a game like this to work at all with such horrible cameras, there's something to be said about that. I don't know if it's something good. Back in 2009, this kind of thing was pretty cute. These silly cameras were all the rage with Photo Booth, like I said, the iToy for PlayStation 2, eventually the Kinect for Xbox 360. It's not like there's no value at all here. As a free tech demo pre-installed on the DSi, it's just okay. As a $5 downloadable game, it's pretty bad. As a WarioWare game, it's fucking atrocious. You can experience the whole thing in 10 minutes. I've gotten more out of single micro games than actual WarioWare titles than this entire thing. Didn't stop me from enjoying it as a kid. I would play it in restaurants. Jesus Christ, like playing Brain Age wasn't bad enough. How about Dr. Mario Express? This was the other game I bought with my DSi shop credit, coming in at another $5, and this was a much better deal than WarioWare. Express is just flat out Dr. Mario, which you can't go wrong with on the go. I don't know, man. You ever just crack under the pressure of talking about Dr. Mario Express? There's nothing to it. It's just Dr. Mario! Not even a multiplayer mode, either local or online, is included. For $5, it's sort of hard to complain, but I'm gonna try. It's a bit too obvious how little content is in many DSiWare games. I get they're incredibly cheap and supposed to be small and tiny to fit on your system digitally, but still, like, come on, you couldn't have included more in WarioWare Snapped? At least Dr. Mario Express has a good reason to exist. Pop your DSi out, play around a Dr. Mario, throw it back in your pocket. But this entire game is just a downgrade of Dr. Mario Online RX on WiiWare. That game was $10. Why does this one have to be so stripped down? The WiiWare game didn't do anything the DS couldn't do. However, we gotta look at that their subtitle. Express was a term used by Nintendo a lot on DSiWare. Many other games used it to denote this is a smaller version of a game that already exists elsewhere. So Dr. Mario Express was a stripped down version of Dr. Mario Online RX. Brain Age Express, Arts and Letters, Math, and Sudoku were repackaged piecemeal variants of both Brain Age and Brain Age 2. See, in PAL territories, these types of games were called a little bit of, and that's a bit more blunt as what these are. In fact, Nintendo has a pop-up warning when you buy them on the eShop asking, you sure about this? Brain Age Express makes total sense as a DSiWare game though. This is the kind of thing you want on your system at a moment's notice. And it's not like this is just a repackaged version of Brain Age 1 and 2. It has some new puzzles and is mostly just a repackaged version of Brain Age 1 and 2. I can't stress how much I love to get ripped off. These versions were $8 a pop, and each honestly gave you more than enough content for that price. When they were just ripping content from previously released games, that's when you got decent titles on DSiWare. Clubhouse Games Express, a series of certain games from the original DS title. Master of Illusion Express was the same thing. Puzzle League Express was just Planet Puzzle League with less features and modes. Same goes for True Swing Golf Express, being a stripped down version of True Swing Golf, which I didn't even know was a Nintendo published DS game. What they don't teach you in school. Then Nintendo took the DS game Electroplankton and divided it up into 10 separate DSiWare games for $2 a pop. I'm starting to get annoyed at this strategy. Like, did Nintendo actually make anything for this? Well, that's where Mario vs. Donkey Kong Minis March Again walks in. Get out. Let's just download it and oh my god! This is the image most see before death. This is a successor to Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, March of the Minis, and the predecessor to Mario vs. Donkey Kong Miniland Mayhem, which was followed up by Mario and Donkey Kong Minis on the Move. Give up on the subtitles. You're just mixing words around. It's impossible to remember which one is which. The next one they're probably gonna call Mario vs. Donkey Kong Move Minis Move. This game is quite derivative of Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2. Is a Mario vs. Donkey Kong game after all. Is there any fan of this series that goes, no, I like that one? They're all the same, but I guess Minis March Again is an improvement over March of the Minis. I mean, for starters, it's $8 and gives you a comparable amount of content to the physical DS game. Completely original new level designs with some new small tweaks to the flow of the gameplay. Once you tap the mini Marios, they move indefinitely, which makes things more interesting. You have to get them all to the goal while collecting everything, while in its predecessor, you could stop them and move directions. This is just more compelling. Plus you have the level editor, which is basically clearly ripped right out of the last game, but it did give this game an endless amount of content to play through user-created stages. For $8, this was a pretty good deal. It was better than Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2. Well, I think it flat out replaced it. I think everybody can agree this was the definitive Mario DSiWare game. Depending on your stance with Mario Clock. For $2, Nintendo was offering a clock application in case this clock wasn't enough. Yes, this was considered an application, not a game, as some DSiWare titles were just that. This is a tool. You can set an alarm. Mario Clock has to be open for it to go off, dear Christ, but you can set an alarm. It's okay, why would you close it anyways? Couldn't they have included a world clock showing the times from different areas of the world? Like a calendar even, please, God, I've never wanted to see a calendar more in my life. It's frustrating because the sister application, Mario Calculator, which released the same day for the same price, has so much more to it. You can convert units, calculate fun things. Why is this so much more worthy of the $2? Well, why aren't they just a part of the same application? The 8-bit Super Mario Bros. Aesthetic is fun, but doesn't amount to anything more than just funny sounds and being able to control some movement. At least you have a bit of interactivity because, lo and behold, Animal Crossing Clock. Who the hell do you think you are? It's just a static picture, and this was $2 as well. It's the exact same as Mario Clock, but with an Animal Crossing skin, and the same can be said about Animal Crossing Calculator, but these both aren't nearly as compelling as the Mario variants. And that's saying something. They're f***ing clocks. The Mario ones have more interactivity. Animal Crossing is the bare minimum, just clocks and calculators with Animal Crossing pictures in the background. Now, you can make your own town tune for the alarm sound in Animal Crossing Clock. Great, not only did I spend $2, I have to supply the alarm sound for them. Nintendo also offered Photo Clock, because what were you expecting me to? The Nintendo Countdown Calendar, Nintendo DSi Metronome, Instrument Tuner.
With the amount of applications Nintendo released on the DSi shop, it makes me wonder why they didn't do more. Like, they could have done a ruler, maybe an email client.
While Nintendo did a few more applications, none was more tantalizing than Flipnote Studio.
Socks.
A free application that allowed you to make flipbook style animations. I was heard! This was an outstanding piece of software. It wasn't too in-depth. I mean, you weren't gonna make a masterpiece on here. I stand corrected. But you didn't have loads of tools and colors, but you didn't need that. It's a DSi application. Give it some slack. This is a toy, and it's so easy and simple to make animations. It's incredible. I used this for hours, recording my own lines, sharing them online via the Flipnote Hatana service. This was the killer app for the Nintendo DSi. Next to Photo Dojo. Oh, hell yeah! Take pictures to put whoever you want in a light fighting game. I used to love stuff like this that put my own creations on a screen where they normally wouldn't be. Photo Dojo was available for free for a short period of time before becoming $2. I don't know, man, I really need a clock. It's barely ankle deep, but for a cheap toy to put whoever you want in a fighting game, it's the most amazing thing I've seen all sentence. This was another I played a ton back in the day. Nintendo knew how to create very simple experiences that kids just eat up.
It's like they're reading my mind. It's like they know what I want. Nintendo, what things do I want next? I was not expecting them to get that right.
More games derived from pre-existing games. Bird and Beans and Paper Airplane Chase both were playable within WarioWare Mega Micro games and were released on their own for $2 a pop. Being high score based games, they worked pretty well here. I think you'd get more playtime out of these than the actual WarioWare game on offer here. 9 Game & Watch games were put out, which I wish they had modern recreations of them like they did in the Game & Watch Gallery series on the Game Boy line. They charged $2 for each, but I would have paid $5 if they had a modern version alongside it. Then there was the Art Style series. Various games are released on either WiiWare or DSiWare. I got Art Style Picto-Bits back in the day. I still don't know. These games were very simple puzzle games, all with different aesthetics and vibes and gameplay. Again, the only one I ever played was Picto-Bits because I will take 8-bit sprite fodder over understanding the game any day. And that wasn't all. Nintendo also released a Kappa's Trail, Crash Course Domo, Hard Hat Domo, Pro Putt Domo, Rock and Roll Domo, White Water Domo, Face Pilot, Flame Tail, Lincoln Launch, Looksie's Lineup, Metal Torrent, Number Battle, Picture Book Games, Pinball Pulse, Snap Dot, Spotto, Starship Patrol, Touch Solitaire, Trajectile, Escape. Who the f are these guys? Let's not be hasty with criticism though, like any of us spent a day in Spotto shoes. On top of everything we already discussed, Nintendo released quite a lot of completely original DSiWare games. It's just nobody ever talks about them. I think Nintendo went a bit too light with many of their releases here. And most games were one-trick ponies. They were about one thing, and then doing it again for a high score. I understand why they were like this. They had the mentality of downloadable games for the DSi have to be quick, bite-sized games you can play whenever, arcade-like experiences, or just stupid dumb tech demos. Except Looksie's lineup, that's a sexy tech demo. I mean, there are standouts like Xscape, which is a successor to the Japan-only Game Boy game X, the predecessor to Star Fox. The Face Pilot, which was pretty much a Pilot Wings game on DS that you control with your face. I made an accessory. Pinball Pulse is a good pinball game. Touch Solitaire is a bad pinball game. Nintendo's output was pretty large on DSiWare, but inconsequential. Too many of these games felt like afterthoughts with how little there was to them. I understand creating smaller games for DSiWare was Nintendo's philosophy here, but seeing what some third parties were doing just completely put them to shame. The best developer for the platform, bar none, was WayForward. The flagship DSiWare game was their own Shantae Risky's Revenge. Unlike other games on here, this was an actual game. A sequel to Shantae on Game Boy Color, Risky's Revenge was a huge title here. It was so well designed, beautiful to look at, a great return to a cult favorite series. It was everything. And it showed that downloadable games on the system could be so much more than a cheap thrill. Games that you play for 5 minutes and need a cigarette afterwards. It's only roughly 5 hours long, so maybe shorter than most box DS games. Do you ever play Pokemon Dash? WayForward also released Mighty Flip Champs. Keep thinking that says chimps. Followed up by Mighty Milky Way, two really solid puzzle games, which eventually led to Mighty Switch Force. It's unfortunate these games don't get as much recognition as Switch Force 1 and 2, but it just shows how forgotten many DSi releases were. Like, you know, SteamWorld Dig and Heist and Dig 2 and Quest, a pretty popular indie series. The first game was SteamWorld Tower Defense on DSiWare. SteamWorld Tower Defense.
I was the first person to say that this week.
Cave Story was on there. That was the indie darling of the 7th generation of game systems. Just cool to get games like that on the go. DSiWare wasn't a huge breeding ground for indies like future Nintendo platforms were, but at the very least it laid the foundation. It gave various developers another avenue to publish their smaller titles. But there were some big names on here, like Need for Speed Nitro X, stripped down version of a retail game. God damn it. I was gonna say, this is of an impressive quality for DSiWare, and now it's obvious why. It wasn't for DSiWare. Tetris Party Live, the same thing. Combat of Giants Dragons Bronze Edition, oh, great subtitle. Phantasy Star Zero Mini, Plants vs. Zombies, Bookworm, Zuma's Revenge, Bejeweled Twist, these were all games that just cut content from retail releases to sell them for cheaper on DSiWare, and I don't know how to feel about this. Which I need to figure out, what if somebody comes up and asks me on the street? On one hand, hey, it gave more players an opportunity to play certain games. Maybe you just wanted to play the main mode in Plants vs. Zombies rather than all the extra junk. But these games flooded the shop. The fact they had to put disclaimers before you buy to tell you, hey, this ain't anything new. I mean, the whole thing made DSiWare feel like it was full of game demos you had to pay for. If they wanted to put a little effort into games, why not release classics through a virtual console? It makes no sense. Well, some publishers went ahead and put out their classic games anyways. The original Rayman, Earthworm Jim, Dragon's Lair 2, and Space Ace, a version of the Oregon Trail based on the current iPhone app at the time we're all here and accounted for. I like these ports because they give me a glimpse as to what could have almost been. Game Boy games downloadable on the DSi. Hell, throw Game Gear, Neo Geo Pocket, Atari Lynx games in there. Don't tell me the DSi couldn't run them. We're talking Game Boy games, not, I don't know, Prehistoric Man or anything. Oh, you son of a bitch! I would have loved to see more classic content on the shop rather than cut down versions of pre-existing DS software. It's just, what would you rather want? Phantasy Star Zero Mini, a stripped version of an RPG? I don't even know how you do that. Or Dirty Larry. Gosh, that's tough. Let's be fair, there were original games made by big name studios. We got Dragon Quest Wars, which was a Dragon Quest Tactics spin-off developed by Intelligent Systems, the Fire Emblem devs. When a downloadable DSi game is in 3D, my jaw drops. Dark Void Zero is one of the more infamous games released by Capcom in tandem with Dark Void on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. This was mockingly set up as a lost NES prequel to that game, and I think it ended up overshadowing it in many ways. Bomberman Blitz, I will describe like I do most Bomberman games. It's a Bomberman game. Frogger Returns. All right. I've come across this game numerous times on the Wii Shop channel on the PlayStation 3, and then they made a DSi version? Why is it Frogger Returns? When did he leave? This version is very comparable to the consoles. It doesn't have the piss ugly title screen though. So I don't know if it's worse or not.
Outside of those, DSiWare didn't get too awful much. It just got awful much. Shovelware, baby! Look at this. The house game, 40-in-1 explosive mega mix, 1950s lawnmower kids. My Asian Farm, I Spot Japan, Box Pusher. Ah! Spot the difference? DSiWare was full of garbage. Doesn't mean the stuff from actual publishers is much better. The more I dive into DSiWare, the more its existence perplexes me. Like, nobody did anything with it.
Nintendo decided to finally care about the service in 2011 by releasing the Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Anniversary Edition after the 3DS came out, and it was only available for a limited time for free. Technically, WarioWare Touch was released as a DSiWare title, only in the 3DS eShop, only through the My Nintendo loyalty program. I only mentioned that so I met my WarioWare Touched quota for the day. And the final DSiWare release was in 2016, Crazy Train. There are some gems on there, but most of the time it was either shovelware or just repackaging games that were already on the DS. Like, why? I'll tell you why, because they're only human. If I ever squirt out Need for Speed Nitro, you bet I'm going in for seconds.
Hey all, Scott here, and I'm on a quest to find a Mario Kart I grew up playing. This is gonna be harder than I thought.
Oh, what system is this for? Mario Kart DS to many was the definitive Mario Kart experience.
Not me though.
I've mentioned this before, but I was born into a Super Circuit family. I owned Mario Kart Super Circuit, played Double Dash at a friend's house, skipped out on DS, and went knee first into Wii. This was one of the only Mario Karts for a while there that eluded me. Don't get me wrong, I wanted all of this, but it just didn't happen. Years later, I've definitely played this one a bit here and there to get a feel on what exactly I missed out on, but I never dived too deep into it all. I mean, yeah, I played a couple of races, but Mario Kart 7 and 8 were giving me the stink eye when I was doing it, so I just went back to playing those. Well, that's about to change. See, even after its successors came out, you always see people considering DS to be the best Mario Kart. And it didn't even have its own unique gameplay gimmick like Double Dash, it didn't have the split screen of 64, it didn't have gingivitis like Super Circuit, it was pretty much a very traditional Mario Kart experience. Well, let's see what exactly is so special about this one. The Nintendo DS was formally unveiled at E3 2004, sporting a fun, shitty design. Tons of games early in development were shown, with one of them being a Mario Kart for the system. Now, if Mario Kart Super Circuit was impressive for cramming a real-life Mario Kart onto a handheld, Mario Kart DS was impressive for cramming a real-life 3D Mario Kart onto a handheld. Like, if you held the footage back and squinted a bit, it looked almost as good as Mario Kart 64. I mean, for a portable system at the time, this looked insane. Super Circuit was fine for the time, but to have a true 3D Mario Kart on the go, that was really cool. Being in 3D was just straight up better for the series. While 2D worked, 3D was obviously superior, and we were still in that era where a 3D game on the go was pretty mind-blowing. Now, originally, Mario Kart DS sported a very traditional logo for the series. They decided to tilt it and spank a DS logo in the corner, and look, it even has racing stripes. Now, this is a fun logo for what obviously is going to be a temporary title. There is a lot to unpack here. So the finalized Mario Kart DS logo, this was where the modern logo for the series started. I feel like I've been stuck in an AutoZone the past 14 years. So yeah, I think this is a much better logo in terms of brand recognition. It gave the Mario Kart series its own look. Like if I show you the M from the old Mario Kart logo up close, this could be really any Mario game. And that's right, it was Mario Party 4 this whole time! However, this logo feels more Gran Turismo than Mario Kart to me. But I mean, I can live with it as long as they update this temp title and come up with a fun subtitle for this game. If there's better evidence on why not to try in this world, I haven't seen it.
The Mario Kart naming schemes have never been good, but we are actually on a pretty good streak with the last two titles. These are actual subtitles that actually identify what the game was all about. But then Nintendo said, that's great, but let's make the entire identity of our games rely on the system's name.
It didn't really matter though, because Mario Kart DS became one of the best-selling entries in the series. After being released in November of 2005, over 23 million copies were sold. There was a special DS bundle, and cover art that supported an unhealthy amount of flexibility. I think it's about time to clear my schedule for the day and finally give this game my undivided attention. This is Mario Kart DS. Here we go! Alright, so Super Circuit has the better opening. We'll put this near here just in case things go more downhill. So starting things off, we can actually draw an emblem for our cart. Now, a lot of people took this as an opportunity to draw something crotchy, but I wrote my social security number. Either way, I gotta censor it. I love stuff like this. It is completely unnecessary, and during gameplay, you're not really gonna see the front of your car that much, but it's the thought that counts. I love the fact they give you the option to do this. Selecting our character, we have the mainstay group that's been here since Mario Kart 64, nothing special. However, we get to see them all in glorious Nintendo DS 3D. Donkey Kong, imagine stepping on this model with bare feet, that would sting like a bitch. There's a certain charm to the low polygonal models they used here. It's not like back on the N64 where the models were low poly and were earlier designs of the characters. By 2005, they kind of perfected the Mario cast design. I mean, they haven't changed much since then. Peach got thicker lips, la-di fucking da. So taking these designs and squishing them down into shapes with like 12 sides, that's definitely commendable and interesting. They still look very much like the characters, just with as many corners cut as they could without sacrificing the designs too much. However, these aren't the only characters in Mario Kart DS. We were graced with 4 unlockable ones obtained after completing certain Grand Prix. Daisy and Waluigi are back.
Give a
But we have 2 characters who have never been in Mario Kart before. Dry Bones. How do you think it would feel if they didn't pick you, they picked a dead you? But we saved the best for last. The final unlockable character in Mario Kart DS, Rob.
It's about f***ing time.
Now before you ask, I don't know why. This is the first time we've had a character playable in Mario Kart that has nothing to really do with Mario. Don't get me wrong. I love that he's here. It's so weird and different and wacky, but why? Well, let's hop into a race, and I finally figured it out. Why everybody loved Mario Kart DS. It's Mario Kart again. I'm seeing a pattern with these games. Not only is it Mario Kart again, but in 2005, this was definitely the definitive Mario Kart experience. And to this day, I'd argue it's the most well-rounded game in the series. It doesn't really skimp out on much. It offers so much of what people loved about the series to begin with, while also introducing tons to the series, like Rob. Gameplay is much more traditional in comparison to the last game, Double Dash. No 2 characters per cart, no character-specific items. In fact, the Ba-Bomb, which was a character-specific item in Double Dash, graduated and became a real-life item. Only 2 brand new items this time around though. The Bullet Bill, which is a much simpler version of the Chain Chomp from Double Dash. When you're in the nosebleeds in 8th place, you might get a Bullet Bill. Activate it and sit back for a few seconds, the game does all the work. You deserve a break. And the bloopers here as well. It sprays ink on your opponent's screen to make it harder to see. Now, this is somewhat effective in multiplayer, but when I'm playing single player and I get the blooper, this does nothing for me. What, I obscure the computer's view? They're computers, they don't have a view. You know what's nice though? We get a map of the bottom screen on the DS. I'm gonna throw it out there that Mario Kart DS had one of the most boring yet greatest uses of the bottom screen on the handheld. Like, yeah, this ain't crazy, but it's super convenient. It doesn't obscure the action on the top screen. It's easy to glance down there. You can see what items everybody has. You can probably play the entire game on the bottom screen if you're a complete fucking maniac, and swap between up close and personal or bird's eye views. So overall, this is a pretty standard Mario Kart. Nothing that crazy in terms of gameplay changes, but solid as can be. However, there is one thing that makes this game the greatest game to feel like a fucking abomination when you're playing against people who actually know what they're doing. Drifting in Mario Kart DS. It feels good. You get a little boost after pulling it off correctly, hopping with the shoulder button, rocking on the D-pad a bit until you see sparks. That ain't nothing new. But I watched this guy's video from 2010, and I'm shocked. Legend has it, if you pull off drifts constantly, you get the upper hand. You just go way faster than anybody totally not cheating. This is called snaking, and it's bullshit. I refuse. You could technically snake in previous games, but it's most prevalent in DS, and I will not become one of them. I'll play how Nintendo wanted me to play, damn it. I will beat the Wario CPU with dignity. Let's move on to the tracks available, and Mario Kart DS has the notable distinction of having some of the most unbelievably memorable and creative courses in the entire series, as well as some of the most forgettable. Shroom Ridge. Sure. The Mushroom Cup starts things off with Figure 8 Circuit, and by God, they didn't lie. This is as basic Mario Kart track as basic Mario Kart tracks get. I have a weird fondness for that basic Mario Kart aesthetic, but nobody played this track and said, "What the f***?" Yoshi Falls, it's pretty good, it's inoffensive, it's like a cough drop, like I'm glad it exists, but it's nothing I need all the time. Cheap Cheap Beach, nothing sticks out like crazy with this one, I gotta be honest, the only reason I remember it is because they brought it back in Mario Kart 8. But let's take a moment to appreciate they didn't update the Mario Kart logo on the banner to the new one. Luigi's Mansion, oh hell yes! Based on the GameCube game, it's such a cool idea for a track, but they had to barf all this mud in this one section. You wake up some days really happy and then you realize there's a bunch of mud in Luigi's Mansion. Desert Hills. Not a fan of this one. I don't know why, I've always had a thing for disliking desert courses. However, Delfino Square more than makes up for it. The bridge goes up and you get some fun little shortcuts. I love when these tracks actually feel like what they're trying to represent, which in this case, it's a town. Just the layout feels so real and fun and interesting. It's just great all around. Waluigi Pinball. There it is.
The definition's been blank all these years!
This is an absolutely amazing idea for a racetrack. Being on a giant pinball table with all types of electronic neon imagery and sound effects going on, it's beautiful. Shroom Ridge. Sure, DK Pass is a solid enough track, but then we move on to Tick Tock Clock. Oh my god, for Mario 64, that's amazing! Mario Circuit's just a feel-good track. Nothing crazy, but just enjoyable to go through. Airship Fortress, like from Mario Bros. 3, that's so cool! I gotta hand it to Mario Kart DS, it really nails the fan service. A ton of tracks are actually based on previous Mario games, but the themes alone make for some incredibly fun courses in their own right. Wario Stadium is a much more colorful and enjoyable track compared to N64 Wario Stadium. Peach Gardens, I like the concept of, I absolutely hate playing through. A Bowser Castle. Honestly, I only really remember this section where you're on the rotating rod and this shortcut, and that's about it. And finally, Mario Kart DS's Rainbow Road. You have a loop-de-loop that's pretty fun. Other than that, Overall, I quite like the track selection here. While there are a handful of forgettable tracks, DS has some of the coolest ideas for courses out there. and then they added 16 more tracks on top of that. Sure, Super Circuit had 40 tracks, but 20 of them were from Super Mario Kart. And there's not a ton of variety in Super Mario Kart's track selection. 16 more tracks, 4 from each of the previous Mario Kart games. This added so much value to the game. It was awesome to finally have 3D versions of Super Mario Kart and Super Circuit tracks, and to also play Mario Kart 64 and Double Dash tracks on the go. Now they did neuter Baby Park that originally consisted of 7 laps, and now in DS it's 5. Oh man, it's inching closer. And while a lot of these tracks are great to see back, there are some odd inclusions. Luigi's Circuit from Double Dash was already kind of a figure 8, and they made a track called Figure 8 Circuit in the game. And having 8 of the 16 tracks come from Super Mario Kart and Super Circuit, while it's cool they're in 3D now, they aren't nearly as interesting or fun to play on as the new or N64 and GameCube tracks.
The addition of retro tracks kind of shows off one of the problems people had with Double Dash at the time of its release. People looked at the track list and kind of said, that's it? Now Mario Kart has twice as many tracks as usual, with half of them being remade from previous entries. It made it so not only are you looking forward to the new tracks of a new Mario Kart, but what tracks they're gonna bring back. But that's not the only thing Mario Kart DS added. Let's talk about online!
Can't say I didn't try. Only specific courses were available to play online, which I find interesting, and it was far from in-depth, but just having the ability to play online multiplayer, the ability to play with friends across the world, the fact that DS introduced this feature to the series, that cannot be understated. This was one of the biggest introductions to Mario Kart. It's a shame it's not functional anymore, but hey, we can still play local multiplayer. You can link up to other DSs without any wires, hell yeah! And you can just use one copy of the game. As long as your other friends have DSs, they're good to go. They're required to play as Shy Guy, which is the perfect way to shame somebody for not buying the game. Battle mode is back, and it comes standard with a stage taking place on top of a Nintendo DS. All right, okay, why did they stop doing this? I love this. Balloon Battle is similar to what we've had before, but this time you can gain balloons by blowing into the microphone. Yeah, they found a use for that thing, and it makes each and every battle feel that much more intense since you're constantly running out of breath. Shine Runners is here, which isn't necessarily the same as Shine Thief. You have to run around and collect more shine sprites than anybody else, and no, you cannot run out of breath in this mode, it's prohibited. Now, what if you're all by yourself? The Mario Kart series has never been the greatest when it comes to serving its lonely customers. Well, welcome to Mission Mode. In my opinion, one of the greatest ideas the Mario Kart series had that they just refused to do again. You get these little pre-made challenges and boss fights. It's nothing amazing or something that'll make anybody go, what the f***? But it gives you something to do single player wise, and it's fun. It's fun to try and get the best time completing these missions. It's fun to just beat them in general. It's just such a great mode to have, and I just don't get why they never brought it back to this day.
Mission mode might not have been anything mind-blowing, but just the fact that it gave you this fun checklist of things to do by yourself made it so then Mario Kart DS was almost as fun in single player as it was in multiplayer. Multiplayer was always going to be more fun because, hey, what else were you going to do with your friends on the school bus? Even though I didn't have this game for the longest time, I think this is one of the most well-rounded games in the series. It has great single-player content, great multiplayer, the tracks are good, battle mode is here, it introduced online. There really wasn't any part of Mario Kart DS they slacked on, which you can't really say about a lot of the other entries. Actually, the intro really wasn't as good as Super Circuit's.
Hey y'all, Scott here. I want to play Super Mario 64 on the go, but there's gotta be an easier way. Super Mario 64 is the game, okay? It revolutionized gaming with its expansive 3D worlds, its 360 degrees of pure unrestricted movement. The fact this was all at the launch of a console, and it was and still is good. Mario 64 could be considered gaming's magnum opus, an accomplishment unlike anything seen before. Hell, I'm not sure if we'll ever see anything like this ever again.
Guess what?
Super Mario 64 DS. Yeah, it's Super Mario for the Nintendo 64 for the Nintendo DS. Okay, sure. Here's beans for your mouth for your floor. What? This is the game that changed games forever. This huge technical and graphical leap. Now on a cartridge this small and playable portably via Nintendo's latest handheld at its launch.
Wow, tell me more! Okay. I love this game. Both versions, to be honest. Mario 64 in and of itself was magical, but Mario 64 DS was magical in its own special way. This was jaw-dropping because it was unlike anything we've ever seen before.
And this was jaw-dropping because it was that same game, but playable anywhere on a Nintendo handheld when all we expected from Nintendo handhelds at the time was... not this. Unfortunately, once that context is removed from Mario 64 DS, it becomes much more difficult to ignore many of the issues present. Yes, Super Mario 64 DS isn't perfect. But hey, nobody is. Look at me, for example. Super Mario 64 DS isn't perfect. I say wrong shit all the time. But what's really up with this game? Well, it all started back in 2004. It all started back in 1996. And 8 years between brand new release and remake. Concept of time is weird. I mean, back then, Mario 64 felt a hell of a lot older than 8 years old, whereas now, time flies so fast. Yesterday was 8 years ago? Well, what exactly was Super Mario 64 to me in the year 2004? So my cousins would bring their Nintendo 64s over to the grandparents' house, and I recall watching them play it there while just being in awe. This game captures your imagination from the second you see it. Like, wow, this is like a whole ass planet we can explore here. That feels like you can do anything, go anywhere in this game. I felt like every little element here was meant to really play into that sense of wonder you have as a child. I mean, from the moment you boot it up. Hello. What can I do to that nose? I can mess around with Mario's face on the title screen for hours here. The castle grounds, oh my god, I've never felt so free in a video game than I did here. Nowadays, it's obviously a fairly small environment, but back then, this opening area felt like it could have been the whole ass game. Moving around with full 360-degree movement, jumping about with pure precision, letting your imagination go wild like you're actually playing outside as a kid. But now, no need to leave the house. Yep, Mario 64 is pretty great. Especially when you actually play it. Yeah, enter the castle, jump into a painting, and we have one of over a dozen worlds to explore and complete missions in to get power stars. 120 in total to be exact. Definitely more than enough to keep you invested for a very long time, and that's just the core experience. Mario 64 can be enjoyed in so many different ways. I mean, it's one of the most popular games to speedrun. There's so many secrets and urban legends that kept players on their toes for decades. Many quirks have inspired players to come up with self-imposed challenges to conquer, like the Green Demon Challenge, the collecting all the red coins before the one-up mushroom catches up to you, and that's all on top of the game being just flat-out fun to control. Like, this was one of the best sandbox experiences, which was how I primarily enjoyed the game back then. Because this way you can't tell me I'm playing it wrong. At this point, probably around 2002, 2003, I hadn't really seen a game like this, especially Mario games. I mean, I was used to Super Mario World on my Game Boy Advance. You show me this and I go, thank God, this steak was looking awfully lonely without a witch to burn at. This was unbelievable. This was what all video games should be like. And from that moment forward, while I still enjoyed my GBA and the games I had for it, I did always yearn for an experience like this on the go. And now I'd get my hopes up thinking that was possible. You'd see a magazine ad for a console game that says, hey, this game is also on Game Boy Advance. And like, can you really blame a 6-year-old for thinking that meant this exact game as it's shown here was going to run on his Game Boy? Apparently you can. Over time, I accepted the fact that home console games looked like this and handheld games looked like this, which was fine by me. The simpler graphics were easier to see with my tears on the screen. But in 2004, Nintendo was determined to prove me wrong, as at their E3 press conference that year, they fully unveiled their new handheld, the Nintendo DS, and alongside it, games showcasing its graphical potential. This was the kind of stuff you only saw on the consoles, but now, here's Metroid Prime, a first-person shooter in full 3D, running on a portable system. Here's Super Mario 64? My reaction must have been through the roof. I didn't watch E3 that year. In fact, I didn't know this game existed for a good long while. I wasn't paying attention to gaming media at the time, but if I was, oh boy. Super Mario 64 by 4? Or times 4? I don't know. That's what it was called upon reveal, but I haven't found Nintendo officially saying the title out loud, so I don't know how to say it. To be fair, who knows, maybe the same can be said about the original. Maybe this is actually pronounced Lenny. But this working title really highlights the focus on multiplayer here. I got this old Nintendo press kit from E3 2004, and their description of Mario 64x4 exclusively discusses it as basically a multiplayer battle game, and nowhere does it detail anything other than duking it out in familiar locations. This was what Nintendo wanted to push. A feature most people forgot was in the final game. A lot changed from reveal to release. Within the span of 6 months, we got a name change to Super Mario 64 DS, confirmation it would be a launch title for the handheld in November of that year, plus details of a full single-player campaign heavily based on the original game. But now with some new twists.
Finally, some changes! It's in my left hand now!
Super Mario 64 DS ended up launching on November 21st, 2004 in the US, ensuring the DS had the Herbs and 6 other games. Bundled with the original run of DS handhelds was a demo for that Metroid Prime game showcased at E3, and with these two being the only games Nintendo themselves published for the thing at launch, really paints a picture as to how the DS was positioned back in its early days. It was that damn PSP, man. It was coming out just a month later in Japan and was practically a PlayStation 2 for your pocket. This was like a dream come true at the time. Home console games on the go! Yeah! In comparison, the Nintendo DS could do 3D, but that wasn't its strong suit. I mean, just look at the buttons we have here. If 3D was really a core part of the DS experience, why wouldn't we have an analog stick? Wait.
Well, I learned of this game's existence well after these formative years of the DS, back when it was pushed as a handheld powerhouse rather than a cookbook. As a kid, I wasn't even aware the DS was a thing back in 2004. It wasn't until 2006 with the Nintendo DS Lite that I became fully trained on the concept of dead skunk. From this point forward, the handheld was far more focused on casual, simpler titles, or at least the marketing was, and while I knew it was capable of 3D visuals, 2008, I was on the school bus and I noticed somebody playing a game that looked just like that game my cousins had. I was dumbfounded. Mario 64? Portably? On my portable? I never knew this existed. Hell, I didn't even know it could exist. Seeing this game in action was like a dream come true. So for the next few days, my mission was simple. Find that game. I looked up all the details I could, rounded up all my allowance money, and after just one weekend trip to Target, I was the proud owner of Super Mario 64 DS, and all these years later, I still am. Rarely did I ever play a game that lived up to all my expectations as a kid, but Mario 64 DS was everything I could have possibly wanted and then some. I could play Super Mario 64 wherever I wanted. The countless car rides, bathroom visits. No joke, I played this at a funeral. So take my word for it. I love Super Mario 64 DS.
Well, it's no wonder I never knew this game existed, considering the box art looks like it could be for any Mario game. Add a soccer ball, a basketball hoop, a damn Chili's. Like, what about this screams Mario 64? Yeah, okay, me. On store shelves, especially as a kid, this just looked like a game called Super Mario DS. The 64 was so small, it looked like a damn asterisk. Speaking of which, what's up with this Microsoft Word art looking ass DS logo here? And why is it so big? What if it was like 2% smaller? Would it be the end of the world?
Oh, just got stabbed, that's all.
Much like the original title for the game, the box art leans heavily into the multiplayer aspect of the package, which, once again, it's strange considering how little the multiplayer ever even mattered. To be fair though, this was one of the biggest omissions from the original game, alongside Luigi not being there either, with both being planned inclusions in the scrapped follow-up, Mario 64 2. So this box art does show off a lot of big things here. Like a zoom blur. Jesus Christ, how fast are they going? The mid-2000s badass Mario stank doesn't help things. I remember the Mario art from this era. Here, look, this pose right here. Oh, so fucking cool. They lower the bill of his cap, hide his mouth more, and it made a world of difference.
Wahoo, bitch.
Wait. Why? Why is the manual like this? What is it, to mimic the dual screens of the DS? They were trying so hard to connect all of the unique features of the DS experience with Mario 64. Even if it didn't make any damn sense, like tap into a new world. 1, we don't tap much in this game, and 2, new world? The entire appeal of this game is that it isn't new. To be fair though, we have so much new content to play with here, in addition to the full Mario 64 rigmarole. If we looked at all the stuff added to this version on its own, we'd be talking more content than most DS games released in this time period had. Snoot 2.
What are we waiting for? To find the fatal flaw with this game? Let's play Super Mario 64 DS. Found it.
What the hell is that? As a kid, anything that differed from the original honestly bugged the hell out of me, even if it was for the better or flat out superfluous. Here's Yoshi instead of Mario. Well, we have Mario here as well and can switch between the two, but like, wow. These 3D models look damn on point, even nowadays. Sure, they're a little pixelated, but this honestly feels like something you'd see on the GameCube or Wii. It's so high quality, and you're telling me I can fiddle around with their faces like in the original?
This you guy is a liar.
Yeah, so we can't play with Mario's 3D face. Rather, he turns into a 2D outline we can mess around with, plus draw our own fixins. As much as I love the original, let's be honest, there's only so much you could do here. After this, what was left? Now, it's not like the DS couldn't do this. There was a tech demo at E3 2004 titled Mario's Face, which was pretty much that old Mario 64 title screen, so I like to think this was more of a creative decision to shake things up. And truthfully, it was for the best. Being able to draw whatever and squash and stretch it and spin it around and wiggle about. As a kid, you knew I thought it was the funniest thing ever to draw all kinds of appendages here. Legs, arms, feet. All right, let's fire up a new save file. Oh my God, the screen has water physics?
Wow! You necessary!
Lord, this is the full-ass opening to Mario 64 in the palm of my hands. It's all here, exactly how I remember. To be fair, this is what I remember. Right from the get-go, Mario 64 DS shows its hand, alright? This is a remake, yes, but I'd argue this is something I like to call a f*** you remake. A remake that doesn't give a damn. They'll alter whatever the hell they want to, and for the most part, it's just to make you uncomfortable.
And we all know Mario comes out of the pipe and the camera swings around and we start playing the game and Luigi and Wario don't show up.
Contrary to the original game, Wario and Luigi follow Mario to Peach's castle after only Mario was invited for cake. Okay, oh, wow, look at that. I'm invited. However, a fair amount of time passes, all while Yoshi's sleeping on the roof of the castle, which was where he was at the end of the original Mario 64. And he's told by Lakitu it may be wise to check in on the three, and thus, we officially kick off Super Mario 64 DS with Yoshi. Guess who was mad? Okay, I wasn't mad. Rather, as a kid, I was definitely put off by the fact I couldn't play as Mario in Mario 64. Can barely play as Yoshi either. What the hell is this? Turns out, we have a run button in this game. Much like in 2D Mario. Now, why is that? The original game didn't have a run button. You could just tilt the stick more or less depending on how fast you wanted to go. Well, ever see a satanic cross? Ah.
Yeah, let's talk about one of 64DS's biggest flaws. The lack of one big-ass flaw. Sure, this analog stick wasn't the greatest, but it was an analog stick, damn it, and for a game designed entirely around an analog stick, oh, it comes in handy. Super Mario 64 was made for this stick, and this stick was made for Super Mario 64. But who gives a shit? The Nintendo DS doesn't have an analog stick, so what are you gonna do when you want to put Super Mario 64 on it? Stop! Now I'm not gonna act like you could never, ever play a 3D game like this with a standard D-pad. But what I will act like is a damn baby about it.
At first you think, oh, this isn't so bad. It's controlling fine enough. I'm able to do what I need to. Sure, it's not as precise as I'd prefer, but turning is so damn sluggish now. It's like they had to overcompensate with more animation between directions since there's only 8 now compared to holy f. I am constantly getting into situations where I need to reorient myself because if I didn't reorient myself, I fall off a cliff. And then if I do reorient myself, listen, this works. Saying I can't possibly play like this is an exaggeration, but I can't blame people for thinking that way. A Mario 64 DS playthrough starts out alright considering most of the levels are pretty large and open. But then you see something like this, and like, what do you want me to do here? Now, if the D-pad isn't precise enough for you, we have multiple other control options, like using the touchscreen to obtain full 360-degree movement. This is even f***ing worse! Just feels wrong, man. That's super unnatural, more so than a typical virtual analog stick you see on touchscreens, because here, you have no restriction on where to touch, so I always end up butting against the edge of the display and needing to reorient myself every single time. There's just no tactility here, which is why Nintendo offered the thumb strap. This was bundled with early DS units, and while it looked like a wrist strap, lo and behold, this thing. This was Nintendo's official solution to the DS's lack of an analog stick. This is my solution to head lice. Seems to be so many people that genuinely believe if you play Mario 64 DS on a 3DS, all problems are solved. Look, you get your analog stick now. Happy? Buddy, if I play a game programmed for a D-pad with an analog stick, that doesn't magically give it analog control. It's definitely more comfortable here, but it doesn't fix the core issue. The way your character moves in 3D space, stupid. Now, when I was a kid, this didn't bother me all too much. Yeah, I knew it was worse. To be honest, using a run button was more jarring to me than anything, but the fact I was playing Mario 64 portably overshadowed any issues at play here. F this game. Well, where the controls falter, the visuals are better. Yeah, this is tricky. I think much of the reason 64 DS looks better in many areas is due to its use of more modern designs for these characters. That isn't Bowser, that's bubonic. The official Mario 64 artwork seen via the packaging and manual holds up decently well, but then you look at Mario in game. He's a dork. DS, everything looks far more natural, all while keeping the spirit of 64 alive. It's honestly impressive. Mario looks a little dead inside now, but aren't we all? The environments themselves look nearly identical to me. Hell, the trees are even still completely flat. The music, for the most part, is ripped directly from the original. It's so damn faithful, but updated in all the right ways. This is like Mario 64 plus. Minus. Yes, Mario may not have the me eyes anymore.
Yeah, you know.
But when the resolution is this low, does it even matter? Yes, the characters all look better. At least I was told. When played on an actual DS, the low resolution is par for the course on that handheld. You expect it to look like this. Playing this somewhere normal Mario 64 can be played, honestly, I'll take the original. Yeah, it looks outdated, but I think it's more charming than DS in many ways. Mario looks dumb as hell here, but he's oozing pure wonder and joy with his every movement. It's like he's a puppy. He feels the need to give World Peace a shout out when collecting a star. In Mario 64 DS, he just doesn't give a damn. I'm not sure which is overall better. They both have significant pros and cons. I don't dislike either, but acting like this is fine as it is, I don't think that's true. But acting like this fixes it, I mean, that's a damn sin. Okay, so we have significantly worse controls in every way, visuals that are, I don't know. What about the core gameplay? I mean, 30 extra stars, 4 playable characters, the multiplayer mode? I see so many people consider this version of Mario 64 to be the definitive release. And the added content is a big reason for that. But what does Scott think?
Scott thinks I think nobody thinks this should be thunk.
So starting the game off with Yoshi, we can't enter the castle just like that. We have to traverse a brand new addition to Peach's castle grounds to obtain a key. This hedge maze. Wow! The first hour or so here, Yoshi is our only option, which, I mean, listen to this. Yoshi has his Yoshi's Island moveset, but now, in 3D, he can flutter jump, gobble up enemies, spit them out, or turn them into throwable eggs. You can swallow fire and become a damn flamethrower. But who the hell cares? All these moves are great, but most of them never feel like they matter at all. The game wasn't designed with egg-throwing mechanics in mind. It's cool that it's here, but that's the only reason it's here. The flutter jump is a great addition though, especially with the warp's controls. Oh, that might be why Yoshi's your starter character, to get you used to bullshit. But see, Yoshi does have a few downsides. For one, he can't punch. His attack, it's assault, but it's not attack. So when we get to the boss here, it's been changed to reflect Yoshi's abilities, which, yeah, I'd say this is better, I guess. I mean, both are pretty unremarkable, but this is more interesting, sure. Though I think the original sort of foreshadowed the Bowser boss fights by having you pick King Babam up, so at the end of the day, this isn't that meaningful of a change. It's a change due to a change due to a change. Other than that, the first bit of this game, it's Mario 64. The structure, the flow, it's all the same. But hey, now we have a full-blown map on the bottom screen. That's a good addition. Even get to see where the Power Star is at, which might be a controversial addition. Some may say, well, this takes the fun out of finding the star based on the title of the mission. To that I respond, that wasn't fun. This doesn't ruin anything. Half the time, the star isn't even visible on the map because you need to do something to make it appear. This just ensures you won't be aimlessly wandering around as much. You get the hint as to what to do with the title, and now you know which direction to head in as well. But you still don't know which plane the star is on, and you still need to be skilled enough to get to it. This is a great quality of life change that only adds to the experience. We also have brand new Power Star missions included. Oh boy! 5 silver stars? What do we do here? Well, collect the 5 silver stars. Wow! Yeah, those 30 bonus stars they boast on the back of the box here, don't expect much. I'd say a third of them are genuinely worthwhile, whether they're added to pre-existing levels or a part of a handful of brand new ones. But for the most part, this is what was added to the game. Collecting 5 silver stars in the level, which makes the Power Star appear, which is functionally nearly identical to the 8 red coins missions that were already a part of Mario 64. Then there are the new Star Switch missions. Step on the button, a Power Star appears elsewhere, get to it before it disappears, and that's pretty much all the new stars in the game. They're new stars to complete, but what are they adding outside of that? Are these missions bad? No, but they don't make a difference whether they're here or not. This isn't really substantial new content. It's just more content for the sake of more content. Out of all the flaws with Mario 64, the fact it didn't have 150 stars wasn't one of them. Now, that doesn't make the concept of 30 new stars not exciting, but when over 2/3 of them are Silver Star or Star Switch based, it's hard to give any of my dams up for this. Well, surely I can spare some for the multiple playable characters. No, my dams! Early on in the game, we're met with a predicament. Koopa the Quick won't race a Yoshi, he'll only race a Mario.
You bigot.
We don't have Mario unlocked yet, but thankfully a Mario head is on the map, so we go collect it, and there we go, problem solved. And kink discovered. Super Mario 64 DS has 4 playable characters, and while you have to unlock them one by one, you can quickly find and grab Mario, Luigi, or Wario's cap in a level to play as them if you find that the star you're looking to nab requires somebody specific. Why do you want to unlock the actual characters then? Well, if you get hit, you lose the cap and you have to go get it again. And more importantly, I'm making Yoshi noises as Wario, man. I don't want to do that. So thankfully, by the time we nab our 8th Power Star, we're able to enter this brand new level to rescue the real Mario, so we can play as him whenever we please. Listen, it's cool as hell to play a new Mario 64 level, and the fact that the boss fight here is the Goomba King from Paper Mario on the N64, like, what? Main series Mario games rarely acknowledge the spin-offs, and if they do, it's oftentimes just in the form of Easter eggs, so this is awesome! The level itself can kick fucking rocks. It's neat that this is a new level, but that's kind of the only thing neat about it. Watch, this is the journey to the boss. It's a 90-degree angle. At that point, why is this level here to begin with? Just jump into the Mario painting and boom, boss fight. Sure, you have 2 stars you can get here, but one is an 8 red coin star and the other is a switch star. It's like the bare minimum they could have thrown in here. Once we get Mario, we can face off against Bowser for the first time, and goddamn, he's looking good. Like, holy shit, that's the guy we made fun of in high school good. Of course, this boss fight was originally designed to show off the analog stick by having us spin Bowser around 360 degrees. Solve for X. I mean, we can swap to the touchscreen on the fly, so it's not like this is lame as hell. It can now be lame as hell in its own special special way. So we have Mario for good now. But what about the others? How do we get them? Well, let's ask Child Scott.
You wouldn't know either way.
Yeah, I never unlocked Luigi or Wario, but could you really blame me? They aren't necessary to complete the game. I already got my fill with the cat mechanic. To unlock Wario, you need Luigi, and to unlock Luigi, you need a damn master's degree. My lord! I got to this room with Luigi's painting in it, and I thought, yeah, no shit. No, yeah, shit. What the hell am I supposed to do here? Well, Luigi is actually trapped in Big Boo's haunt. Where is he? How do you get him? I never got Luigi as a kid, and knowing where he was this whole time, my grades make a lot more sense now. To unlock him, we have to beat Big Boo in this room mimicking the design of a Nintendo DS, which is pretty damn cute. I mean, this whole thing is neat. Taking elements from games released after Mario 64 and popping them in. Like Luigi's Mansion here, Paper Mario there. Oh, this brand new stage is based on Super Mario Sunshine. That's incredible!
And for example, this is what I deem incredible.
It's just shallow water surrounding a couple of mounds, and there's only one star you get here, and it's just collecting silver stars again! Listen, I understand this as a cheap way to add another mission to pre-existing levels, but as the sole objective in a brand new course, it's just... why? Why not add a switch star? Why not add 8 red coins? Well, it's because Sunshine Isles was designed for the Versus mode and thus has no potential for legitimate Power Star missions. Just like this brand new secret stage you get to through the courtyard. As a new Mario 64 course, it's just a bunch of bullshit. All this nonsense going on, and for what? 1 star obtained by collecting 5 silver stars. And wouldn't you know, bam, multiplayer stage. These levels don't detract from the game, but they most definitely don't add to it either. Yes, it's cool to randomly come across a new stage hidden in the courtyard. Yes, it's cool to see a Mario Sunshine reference, but like, that's all these have going for them. Thankfully, the level where we unlock Wario is far more in-depth. And see, we have to use Luigi to turn invisible, go through the mirror here, and jump into the Wario painting in the reflection. I never graduated. But man, if the boss fights for the other characters made some deep-cut references, God only knows what we'll have to defeat to unlock Wario. Chief Chili. Well, surely this guy has ties to Wario. Maybe a reference to WarioWare, Wario Land? What's he from?
I'm experiencing history in the making.
Doesn't even matter because guess what? I wouldn't want to unlock Wario to begin with. Now that we have all the characters, let's talk the rules here, all right? After nabbing Mario, Yoshi is thrown to the wayside. You might need him for a star or 2 here and there, but this is still a Mario-centric adventure, just like the original. The game has always been designed around his moveset, his jump, his speed. Everything in Mario 64 revolved around Lenny. So introducing new playable characters, I mean, it's not necessary, but it for sure can be cool.
And for example, this is what I deem cool.
The 4 playable characters, I mean, I can make it sound more annoying than it really is. Mario 64 DS has you play as certain characters to get to certain places to get certain stars. Reasonable enough. Problem is, it feels so damn forced and overcomplicated, all just to shoehorn in some Wario use. In the original game, you see a block like this? It's gonna give Mario a wing cap, a metal cap, or a vanish cap, so you can then use their unique abilities to nab a specific star in that course. In 64 DS though, they separated these power-ups amongst the different characters via these power flowers. So only Wario can use the metal power, Luigi can use the vanish. On N64, I see the power-up block, it'll give me exactly what I need. On DS, if I'm playing as Luigi, it'll always give me Luigi's power, which may not be useful in that specific course, so I have to figure out who I need here, okay? Well, it looks like I'll need the metal cap, so I need Wario. I could exit the level to go to this room in Peach's castle to officially swap to him, or I can just pick up the Wario cap already here and transform into Wario right quick. Easy enough. Well, let's make our way over there. Where is it? Oh, it's on a different level of terrain. Could be above me, could be below me. Who knows? Well, once we figure that out, voila! Why can't we just switch characters like in Grand Theft Auto 5 or something? I find that Mario 64 DS really tries its best to validate the new characters. They don't. Just taking stuff Mario could do in the original game by himself and stripping him of it just to give Luigi something to do? I don't think that's egregious or anything. It just doesn't feel like these characters add anything. They had to make excuses to give them purpose. With that being said, they do all control differently, so their addition does give the player more choice. Mario is all around average, Luigi has a better jump, Wario is the strongest, and Yoshi has the most unique abilities. Hell, you can make the argument that you might as well stick to Yoshi throughout the whole game. There is no Yoshi cap you can swap to as the other characters. If you want to play as Yoshi, you have to manually swap to him, and while entering a course, Yoshi is the only character where you can select a cap to start the stage off with. You can also make the argument that everything is going to be okay. I don't know, the fact you lose the cap after getting hit, you also take more damage in this form, and honest to God, the wrong character noises might be the biggest problem. I just stick to regular Mario for the majority of the playthrough. The Wario is damn useless. He can punch these black bricks that were added to the game, and you need to do that for some stars and secrets. You can use the metal cap, but that's it. There's no other reason to play as him. He's slow as dirt, jumps like dirt. Put a gun to my head and tell me to play as Wario? I mean, Jesus Christ, that's a gun. Sure. Luigi's okay. His main claim to fame is this insane backflip. I mean, you can just pull one of these out whenever and skip whatever platforming challenge is in front of you. Yeah, that's a lot more compelling than... It just doesn't feel as useful as it feels cheap. But hey, compared to his ability to run on water for a bit, that isn't cheap. Also isn't useful at all. The backflip completely validates Luigi here, which is sad because it breaks the damn game. If it wasn't for the backflip, there'd be like no reason to use it. But because he has the backflip, I hate his ass. He's a bastard. And then Yoshi. I mean, God bless him, but he just has too many downsides. He's not strong enough to break blocks, can't attack normally, can't pick up things normally, and his abilities are more gimmicky than useful for the most part. The power-up he gets from the Power Flower is spitting fire, which can be obtained normally by just swallowing fire you find in the level, and that'll usually be around an area where you'll need to spit fire, but the Power Flower version allows you to spit fire indefinitely for a limited time. So definitely. Mario's Power Flower ability is also unique and brand new to this release. Balloon Mario, ripped right from Super Mario World. Hey, I knew something was missing from the original. Mario 64 is great and all, but what if he was bigger? I'll give Balloon Mario this. It's way more useful than the other power-ups. These kind of just feel like you use them because you have to. Here, I mean, we can use it as a quick way to get to higher terrain in addition to using it because we have to. However, this, alongside everything else brought to the table by the new characters, gives me the same exact feeling. I feel nothing! Are the new characters bad additions to Mario 64 DS? No. They're just unnecessary, but they felt the need to make them necessary, which just highlights how unnecessary they truly are. Now, I don't want to understate how cool it is these characters are here. I mean, Luigi's finally in Mario 64. Wario's in a main series Mario game. Yoshi's his own character, not just some rideable power-up, and they all have unique abilities, their own playstyle. This is cool as hell. The problem is when it's forced down your throat and they have to come up with all these excuses to make you use each and every one of them in a game entirely designed around just Mario, it's not cool as hell. I think it would have been far better if they pulled a Super Mario Bros. 2 or Super Mario 3D World, where all the characters had different strengths and weaknesses and playstyles. But that was it. It was down to who you wanted to play as, not who the game told you to play as. Well, damn, look at all these new additions. Also known as cons. That begs the question, what else did they add to the game? Well, some elements in the courses have been altered from the original, like Tick-Tock Clock. We've got a floor here now. Well, that's an improvement. But looking at the rest of the levels, any other changes aren't really upgrades as much as they are, well, just changes. Is this better? I mean, it's different. Most alterations were made just for the sake of the DS exclusive stuff, like how King Babam's boss fight was changed for Yoshi, or all the black bricks added to give Wario purpose. Like, none of this enhances what was already there. The vast majority of new power stars don't add anything of worth. The new levels are few and far between and aren't even great to begin with. They're puny in size and merit. The Super Mushroom has been added to the game. Oh man, what's next? Are they gonna add Mario to the game? Yeah, a little strange how this is a big addition to a Mario game, but it wasn't in 64. Because it didn't make sense there. With Mario having a health bar now and power-ups not working as they did in the 2D games, the Super Mushroom sat that one out. But it's back now! between this and Balloon Mario, I'm in heaven. Technically speaking, this is labeled as a regular old mushroom, but in reality, this is the Mega Mushroom from New Super Mario Bros., though that released 2 years later. It all started here. Alongside my opinion on this power-up. Who fucking cares? As a kid, this was so exciting to use. Like, oh my god, I'm huge! This is great! I can live out my wildest fantasy!
Say what you want, my goals are reasonable.
But as I've grown up, I've realized how much of a cheap gimmick this is. Literally just destroy the level design. Okay. The wall jump's now improved. That's a great change. Alongside the expansion from having to catch a rabbit twice while in Peach's castle to...
Finally, my problems with Mario 64 have been addressed.
Alright, so why does this version have 56 years? Well, all you got for catching a rabbit in Mario 64 was a measly power star. In Mario 64 DS, you'll be catching more rabbits as you progress through the game, and what do you get by catching said rabbits? So this is what makes it the definitive version. In the new rec room of the castle, we have access to the mini games, here to showcase the capabilities of the DS's touchscreen. Yeah, every complaint I had before this is a moot point. I mean, just look at this. Holy f***, right? These are some of the most ingenious uses of a touchscreen out there, and this was all in 2004. You know what was happening that year? And they were able to develop these games regardless. You know what? Why not? Loves Me, Mario Slot, Super Mario Slot, Lucky Stars, Boombox, Psych Out, Memory Match, Slot Shot, Mushroom Roulette, Memory Master, Toy Box Shuffle, Puzzle Panel, Puzzle Panic, Snowball Slalom, Giant Snowball Slalom, Bingo Ball, Hide and Boutique, Bounce and Pounce, Concentration, Intense Concentration, Like Do Launch, Bounce and Trounce, Witch Wiggler, Mix a Mug, Paragon, Paragon and On, Connect the Characters, Shell Smash, Mario Slides, Trampoline Time, Trampoline Terror, Shuffle Shell, Picture Poker, Wanted, Ba-Bomb Squad, Soar and Splode. Not all of these are winners. Many of them are just variations of each other and or purely luck-based, but at the same time, as basic as the Loves Me minigame is, there's such an addictive charm to using the touchscreen to interact with these. Creating trampolines with the stylus was and still feels pretty slick. Luigi's Casino games awakened something in me. And they're just all good, clean, simple fun. I don't know, they just made this game the perfect all-in-one package for a road trip. A full-ass console game on the go, in addition to a handful of high-score-based mini-games. You can swap to one if you get bored of the other. Or the other versus mode. So what, this is like the big new addition? I mean, it's what they nearly named the game after. Surely it can't be as bad as the Versus mode in Super Mario 64 DS, but it is as bad as the Versus mode in Super Mario 64 DS. It is the Versus mode in Super Mario 64 DS after all. This is abysmal. Only 4 stages, small as hell. One is the damn slide, which only lasts for like 15 seconds, and then the rest of the match is just in this small box at the end of it. And the entire mode itself is broken. It's all about just grabbing the power star on the map. But when you get a power star, you're stuck doing this animation, which gives the other players ample time to run up to you, start attacking, and right when you get out of your animation, you get hit, lose your star. But then another player will grab it. So all you gotta do is run up to them and start attacking when they're doing the animation, and then you'll get the star back until the same thing happens to you over and over and over until time's up. I love this game.
You think with all that bitching that I'd hate this thing? I mean, it's like everything they added, every change they made, I have a problem with. Well, it's because everything new added to Mario 64 DS, while cool on the surface, the more I analyze them, the more problems arise, the more unnecessary it all feels. I don't think anything added to the core Mario 64 experience really amounts to much at all. However, the effort put into this release is so damn apparent. And not only did they throw in all this brand new content, they got it running on a damn cookbook. Mario 64 DS was one of the most impressive games to me as a kid. It still is in many ways. I mean, this was the perfect all-in-one package. There was so much here. As a kid, none of the problems I brought up today really mattered all that much to me. And even these days, yeah, I'm not lying. A lot of these problems do hamper my enjoyment of the game, but I don't really care. None of them are enough to ruin the game. They just make it hard for me to consider this the definitive release. This doesn't feel like what Mario 64 was always meant to be. Rather, a really cool alternative take
on Mario 64. One that's so much cooler when you consider it released on a handheld in 2004. Mario 64 DS is not a perfect remake. I would not recommend playing this over the original. But I want to tell you not to either. This is still Super Mario 64, and while this version is more novelty than necessary, it's just so cool. I just wish I didn't have to use the damn D-pad. The 4 playable characters are so neat. It's so cool that they're here, but like, god damn, I'm so fucking sick of switching between them just to get all the stars in the game. Oh my god, it's so cool. They added 30 extra stars to the game, but like none of them actually matter. They're all pointless. It's just like, what the hell is the point of this? It's an endless cycle.